Chapter 1528. Everyone stop. Let him go. As soon as Li Tai's words fell, all the teachers, students, and Imperial guards on Cloud Mountain turned to look at him. Even Wu Jie himself looked curiously at Li Tai. Facing everyone's gazes, Li Tai said, "The Yamacho said to let him go. Today's enmity will be repaid by Yinhuang College in the future. I hope Imperial teacher and Conchieli are ready to face the wrath of our Yamacho." Li Tai's words were powerful and resonant, causing the students and teachers of the academy to rejoice. But Wu Jie's eyes were gloomy, and he remained silent. By now, Duguixin had already recovered, and although his true chi had not yet fully recovered, his limbs were gradually regaining strength. After pondering for a moment, he took 2 steps forward and shouted to the Imperial Army soldiers surrounding Wu Jie. "His Royal Highness King Wei has ordered all of you to withdraw." At this point in the battle, Duguixin was well aware that if the battle continued, it would only increase the number of casualties, and nothing good would come out of it. Today, all the top fighting forces on Cloud Mountain had been lost at Wu Jie's hands. Just relying on the Imperial Guard's battle formation to completely trap Wu Jie was no different from ascending to the heavens. The main reason was that Wu Jie's combat strength had exceeded everyone's expectations, and the terror of a martial grandmaster was far beyond their imagination. Instead of that, it would be better to go with the flow and listen to Li Tai's orders and let Wu Jie go. Shua. Hearing this, the Imperial Guard soldiers all stepped back 3 steps and opened a path for Duguixin. They would not doubt any of Duguixin's decisions. Wu Jie looked at Li Tai with some surprise, probably never having thought that this unassuming little fatty was actually the great Tang's Wei King. If I had known earlier, I would have captured him. That way, the Tang army wouldn't have dared to attack, right? Wu Jie couldn't help thinking to himself. But with such a large ruckus on Cloud Mountain, the surrounding armies would definitely hurry over. If he didn't want to be trapped in the Great Tang, he had to leave Cloud Mountain as quickly as possible. Therefore, he suppressed the thought of taking Li Tai hostage and left through the path that the Imperial Guards made way for him. With a leap, he disappeared without a trace. Qin Ke, Wu Jie is carrying a lot of the Academy's secrets. How can we let him leave Cloud Mountain? Seeing Wu Jie leave with the Academy's secrets, Li Gang trembled and said with a pained expression. Li Tai walked up to Li Gang and whispered, "Mr. Wenji, Yamacho just told me that Yinhuang College wants people, not confidential information. As long as the teachers and students of the Academy are here, we will definitely be able to develop more advanced knowledge and technology. Yamacho doesn't want the Academy to suffer any more casualties because of those documents." Li Gang was silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed and said, "This old man is old, but I can't see through things as clearly as Yamacho. I'm old. Yamacho's idea isn't wrong. As long as the Green Hills last, there's hope." After saying this, Li Gang turned to the students and teachers behind him and solemnly declared, "Today, the Turkic state teacher humiliated my Yinhuang College. All teachers and students of the Academy must remember today's shame. As students of the engineering school, you must create even more advanced tools and weapons for the Great Tang. In the future, when the King's army conquers the Turks, you must avenge today's humiliation." Although the old teacher was a Confucian scholar and usually had a refined appearance, today, the old teacher had twice shown his hot-blooded side to the students. This hot-bloodedness came from his deep love for his country. Avenge today's humiliation. Avenge today's humiliation. Hearing this, the students and teachers of the Academy were all enraged. Their hot-blooded cheers soared into the sky as if they wanted to overturn the night sky. Li Gang gestured with his hands. After the students quieted down, he said loudly, "Now, all students and teachers, return to the dorms to rest. In 3 days, Yinhuang College's final exam will be held. Only then will this old man know your determination to avenge today's humiliation." "Yes, Teacher Wenji." The students responded loudly and encouraged themselves in their hearts. They must do well in this final exam. After a while, the students and teachers returned to sleep. Li Gang, supported by Li Tai and Yuchi Baolin, came to Dugu Xen and cupped his hands. "Thank you for saving us tonight, General Dugu. Otherwise, the Academy's foundation would have been destroyed." Dugu Xen quickly turned around and cupped his hands. Teacher Wenji's words are too serious. Protecting Yanwang College is this general's responsibility. But in the end, I couldn't stop Wu Jie. This general is truly ashamed. A trace of pain flashed across Li Gang's eyes, but he still waved his hand. This isn't General Dugu's fault. Wu Jie is too strong. The Imperial Army has already suffered many casualties because of this. The most important thing now is to send Mr. M.O. and the others to Dr. Sun for treatment as soon as possible. I'll have to trouble General Dugu to send people to help move the injured. That's what this general should do. Dugu Xian nodded and said, "You guys, quickly come and help." 2 teams of Imperial Army guards hurriedly stepped forward and lifted up all the warriors of the Academy, including Mo Huai, as well as the injured Imperial Army guards, including Dugu Feiying, and carefully walked towards Sun Simiao's residence. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, a flurry of footsteps came from the mountain path. Li Gang and Dugu Xen looked at each other and said in unison, "Reinforcements are here." Sure enough, as soon as their voices fell, many cavalrymen riding on war horses appeared on the mountain path. All of them were wearing Mingguang armor. Obviously, they were all elite soldiers. The leader of the cavalrymen was a handsome and extraordinary general. The man rode his horse until he was 5 feet away from Li Gang. He quickly dismounted and said, "Greetings, Teacher Wenji. Greetings, Your Highness King of Wei." Li Gang and Li Tai said in unison, "General Li, there's no need to be so courteous." The one who had come was Li Junxian, who had brought 300 elite cavalry with him. After bowing, Li Junxian looked at the devastated academy gate. It was clear that a great battle had taken place here. He couldn't help but ask in confusion, "Where is the Turkic state preceptor, Wu Jie?" Dugu Xian lowered his head in shame. Li Gang sighed and said, "Wu Jie's strength is tyrannical, and the people of Cloud Mountain were unable to stop him. He has already escaped from Cloud Mountain." "What? Wu Jie has already escaped?" Li Junxian's eyes widened in shock. He quickly asked, "Then, did Wu Jie take away the confidential information of Yanwang College?" After serving Li Er for so long, Li Junxian knew what Li Er cared about the most, so he asked this question urgently. Li Gang nodded and said sadly, "They were all taken away. All of them. They were all taken away by him?" Li Junxian's face was filled with shock. Dugu Xian said in shame, "This matter is due to this general's incompetence. 2,000 Imperial Army soldiers were unable to take down the Turkic state preceptor and allowed him to escape unscathed after stealing the Academy's information. When this general returns to Chang'an, he will definitely ask for His Majesty's forgiveness." Li Junxian was just about to console him when Li Tai said, "General Dugu, there is no need to blame yourself. Since this king had you release the Turks, this king will naturally personally explain this matter to Imperial Father." Li Junxian was so frightened that he almost staggered. His mind was in turmoil. The mighty king of Wei had intentionally released the Turkic state preceptor. If this news were spread, it was inevitable that people would label Li Tai as a traitor. But seeing how confident Li Tai was, Li Junxian didn't ask any more questions. After all, Li Tai was Li Er's son. Even if he had made a mistake, it should be handled by the Imperial clan's ancestral temple, not by him. Thus, he cupped his fist and said, "Since Wu Jie has already left Cloud Mountain, this general will lead some men in pursuit and see if we can recover the Academy's secret information." Li Tai nodded. Then General Li, you must be careful. Li Junxian grunted and then hurriedly turned around and led the 300 horsemen down the mountain. "Young master, it's so late. Where are you going?" Taiyuan Prefecture, Shouyang County. In Li Zishuan had simply packed his luggage and was carrying a bundle as he knocked on the door of the room next door. Hu Hanyan sleepily opened the door. When he saw Li Zishuan fully dressed and carrying a bundle, Old Hu couldn't help but ask in confusion. Li Zishuan expressionlessly said, "Uncle Hu, something urgent has cropped up at the academy. I must return now. This way, I'll have to trouble you to take care of the children in the Sky Rooster Brigade and bring them to meet up with Little Ku's Sky Rooster Brigade. Hu Hanyan couldn't help but be shocked by these words. Young master, how is the academy? What urgent matter has cropped up? Li Zishuan shook his head. Uncle Hu, you don't need to worry about this. I will take care of it myself. But after I leave, I'll have to trouble you with the children. Hu Hanyan had already recovered from a shock. He helplessly nodded and said, Young master, be at ease. Old Hu, will definitely take good care of the children. Young master can leave without worry. Then I'm relieved. Li Zishuan nodded and turned to leave. Old Hu hurriedly called out from behind. Young master, be careful. If not for the fact that he had to stay behind to take care of the children, Old Hu would definitely have followed Li Zishuan back to deal with that so-called urgent matter. From Li Zishuan's expression, it was easy to see that the urgent matter at the academy had something to do with martial arts. Old Hu also wanted to help. Li Zishuan, who had just walked a short distance away, couldn't help but pause and reply, Uncle Hu, be at ease. I'll be fine. As soon as he finished speaking, he left quickly without any hesitation. Hiya! Hiya! A moment later, a young man in white riding a large white horse approached the city gate at a high speed. Chapter 1529. Son greets Imperial Father. Greets Imperial Mother. In the Lijiang Palace, Li Tai, who had heard the attendant's words, quickly walked in and then bowed to Li Er and Empress Zhang's son, who were sitting high above. No need for formalities. Li Er waved his hand and asked impatiently, Qin Ke, why did you return to Chang'an? What's the current situation on Cloud Mountain? Li Tai's eyes narrowed slightly as he cupped his fists and said, replying to Imperial Father, Wu Jie has already escaped from Cloud Mountain. At this moment, General Qiu and Chief Steward Zhao are leading troops to intercept him. Escaped? Li Er's old face instantly became gloomy as he stood up and asked, why couldn't Dugu Xian's 2,000 Imperial army hold out until Zhen's reinforcements arrive? Could it be that 2,000 Imperial army soldiers couldn't stop Wu Jie? Subconsciously, Li Er thought that the main reason Wu Jie escaped was due to Dugu Xian's incompetence in supervising the battle, so his expression naturally became ugly. Li Tai was a loyal person. Previously, the two brothers of the Dugu family had risked their lives for Yanhuang College and were both seriously injured. He had seen it all and remembered it in his heart. So when he heard the dissatisfaction in Li Er's words towards Dugu Xian, Li Tai quickly explained. Imperial Father, it's not that General Dugu was defeated, but that the Amacho didn't want to see too many people die because of the Academy's materials. So they ordered everyone to let Wu Jie go. Li Er's eyebrows rose as his expression changed, and he angrily said, Bastard, the Academy's books and manuscripts are the secrets of our great Tang. How could Li Zishuan give them to the Turks? What is this brat's intention? Although Li Er had always admired Li Zishuan, today, Li Zishuan actually ordered people to let Wu Jie go, which made Li Er quite angry. If Li Zishuan was in the hall right now, Oli would definitely have him beaten 30 times and thrown into prison. Your Majesty, please don't be angry. Empress Zhang's son hurriedly said, the Marquis of Yong is benevolent. He just doesn't want to see more innocent people sacrificed. I hope your Majesty won't blame him. Empress Zhang's son didn't have any ill feelings towards Li Zishuan's actions. On the contrary, she faintly admired Li Zishuan. In her opinion, people with a kind heart would be at ease to use. Li Er snorted and said unhappily, what innocent sacrifice? Pedantic. For the sake of preventing these books from reaching the Turks, even the sacrifice of 5,000 people was worth it. If we allow the Turks to grasp the advanced technology of Yanhuang College, in the future when the Great Tang and the Turks go to war, there will be dozens of times more soldiers dying on the battlefield. Emperors were always ruthless, but at the same time, Li Zishuan was also far-sighted. It was hard to say who was right or wrong between him and Li Zishuan. It can only be said that both of them had their own considerations. In Li Er's eyes, The books and information of the academy were more important than anything else. This was because he had seen the magic of the telegraph and the terror of gunpowder. He deeply understood that if the technology of the academy fell into the hands of the Turks, it would bring a devastating disaster to the great Tang. After a moment of silence, Li Tai cupped his hands and said, "Imperial Father, Yamacho said on the telegraph that it doesn't matter if the secret documents of the academy are lost. As long as he is here, as long as the teachers and students of Yanhuang College are here, these documents can be rewritten. The academy can also achieve greater glory." In tonight's battle, Teacher Mo and Teacher Zhang San were both seriously injured. More than 10 guards of the academy were killed or injured. Many students were also injured. Even Teacher Wenji was slightly injured. If Yamacho didn't give the order to let Wu Jie leave, with Wu Jie's strength, if he wanted to make a move on the weak students and teachers of the academy, no one would be able to stop him. The teachers and students of the academy would definitely suffer heavy losses. As long as there's life, there's hope. Yamacho said that today's hatred, when he comes back, he will definitely repay it double. At that time, the two Dugu generals, Teacher Mo and Teacher Zhang San of the academy, were all seriously injured. If they continued to force Wu Jie to stay, there would definitely be rivers of blood on Yinshan Mountain. Therefore, this son feels that Yamacho's actions are not inappropriate. "Imperial Father, please understand." After saying this, Li Tai bowed deeply. The hall instantly quieted down. Li Tai stared at Li Tai. After a while, he said in a bad mood, "Qingke, it hasn't even been a year since you entered Yanhuang College, and you're already speaking up for that brat Li Zixuan? You even dare to disobey this emperor's orders?" At this moment, old Li's mood was very complicated. On one hand, he felt that what Li Tai said was not completely unreasonable. In the current situation of Yinshan Mountain, if they forced Wu Jie to stay, it was likely that Wu Jie would become desperate and make a move on the weak students and teachers of the academy. But on the other hand, old Li also felt a little jealous. This little fatty in front of him was his most beloved son, but now he was speaking up for someone else. As a father, how could he be happy? Li Tai bowed and said, "This son is not speaking up for Yamacho, but in the situation at that time, Yamacho's decision was undoubtedly the most correct. More than 10 days ago, the Mountain Elder and Mr. Zhang San left Cloud Mountain one after another. Originally, there were 3 evolved Jing Masters in Yanhuang Academy, but in an instant, only Mr. Mo was left. Although Mr. Zhang San unexpectedly returned tonight, when he arrived, Mr. Mo was already seriously injured. That was why Wu Jie was able to kill so many people in the academy. Under such circumstances, other than letting him leave Cloud Mountain, we have no better choice. Imperial Father, please understand." Hearing this, Li Er finally fell silent. On the side, Empress Zhang Sun asked doubtfully, "Teacher Zhang San? Qingke, if Imperial Mother remembers correctly, didn't Teacher Zhang San leave the academy a few days ago and sail out to sea?" Li Tai replied. Replying to Imperial Mother, Teacher Zhang San originally wanted to go out to sea, but before he left, he felt uneasy. He thought that there were many secrets hidden in Yinshan Mountain that the world coveted, so he stayed around the academy for a few days. For a full 4 days, everything was calm and peaceful. On the 5th day, when Teacher Zhang San was about to leave, he suddenly felt a faint aura locking onto the academy. Teacher Zhang San felt that something was wrong and postponed his plan to go out to sea. As a result, Wu Jie attacked the academy at night today. So that's how it is. Emperor Zhang Sun nodded thoughtfully and sighed with relief. "I have heard that Teacher Zhang San is unparalleled in chivalry. Last year, he was forced to agree to your Yamacho's condition of guarding Yinshan Mountain for a year. Who would have thought that even before he left, he would still risk his life for the academy? The reputation of the Feng Chun 3 heroes is indeed well-deserved." Li Tai agreed. Imperial Mother is right. Tonight, if Teacher Zhang San hadn't returned in time, Teacher Wang Ji of the academy would have been killed by Wu Jie. No matter what, the academy's things cannot fall into the hands of the Turks. Send a telegram to Li Zixuan and tell him to take responsibility for the disaster he caused. Tell him to take back the things Wu Jie took." At this moment, Li Er coldly snorted and interrupted. His words contained a tone that would not allow anyone to object, and the atmosphere in the hall instantly became heavy. Li Tai couldn't help but feel his heart sink, and he hurriedly advised, "Imperial Father, you must not. Your Sunher teacher, Imo, mentioned that the Yamacho is only at the middle stage of the Grandmaster realm, while Wu Jie is at the Great Grandmaster realm. If you let the Yamacho chase after Wu Jie, wouldn't that be sending him to his death? Your son asks Imperial Father to reconsider." Empress Zhang's son couldn't help but reveal a trace of anxiety, but she didn't say anything. Presumably, she felt that with Li Er's trust in Li Zixuan, he definitely wouldn't send Li Zixuan to his death. Sure enough, Li Er raised his eyebrows and said, "Who said that we would let him go alone? We will order all the soldiers along the way to be under his command. Not only will we take back the Academy's materials, we will also make sure that Wu Jie remains in the Great Tang." To have all the soldiers between the Great Tang and the Turkic Khaganate under one person's command, Li Er's arrangement was completely based on his trust in Li Zixuan. Otherwise, he, who had taken the throne through a coup, wouldn't have so easily handed over more than 100,000 soldiers to someone who wasn't a member of the imperial family. Hearing this, Li Tai let out a sigh of relief and said, "But the Yamacho has already rushed back to Chang and from Shouyang County. The journey is bumpy, and if your son sends a telegram now, the Yamacho might not be able to detect it." Li Er waved his hand and said, "Then send it until he notices. No matter what, we absolutely cannot let the Turkic Khaganate leave the Great Tang with the Academy's top-secret materials. In addition, we will send the Imperial Army and cavalry to pursue along the way and cooperate with Li Zixuan to capture Wu Jie." Li Tai knew that there was no turning back, and besides, this seemed to be the best result. He bowed and said, "Your son obeys your majesty." After saying this, seeing that Li Er had no other orders, Li Tai quickly excused himself and left the Lijiang Hall. Now, he had to return to Yanhuan College as soon as possible and send a message to Li Zixuan through the telegram. However, Li Tai also knew that for Li Zixuan, there would be several very difficult battles ahead, and if he was not careful, he could easily lose his life. Although Li Er had ordered the soldiers of the various provinces to be under Li Zixuan's command, when it came to a real fight, the role of these soldiers was very limited. For example, in the battle in front of the Academy, Wu Jie had single-handedly slaughtered everyone. Although the Imperial Army was well-trained, they were unable to effectively surround Wu Jie, and the 2,000 Imperial Army soldiers were unable to display their full strength. In comparison, the soldiers of the various provinces were definitely not as elite as the Imperial Army, so they were of even less help to Li Zixuan. Unless Wu Jie stood still and waited for the soldiers of the various provinces to completely surround him. In that case, there was a chance he would be exhausted to death by the local soldiers. But was that possible? Obviously not. The moment Wu Jie discovered that there were soldiers around him, his first reaction would definitely be to use his movement technique to escape, not giving the army a chance to surround him. Thus, in a battle with Wu Jie, the key to victory was still a showdown between peak experts. If the Great Tang's elite soldiers could effectively contain Wu Jie and create an opportunity for the soldiers of the various provinces to surround him, there was still a high chance they could defeat the Turks. The Turkic imperial teacher is severely exhausted and has also suffered some injuries. He definitely can't have run far. Search. Lantian County, at the foot of Cloud Mountain, Zhao Song was leading several thousand Imperial Army soldiers to search for Wu Jie's whereabouts with torches. Even the remaining 1,000 Imperial Army soldiers had joined the search. The Cloud Mountain was surrounded by bright torches, and from a distance, it looked like fire dragons were dancing at the foot of the mountain. General Dugu immediately takes some men to Lantian County seat and informed County Magistrate he to send out all the bailiffs to guard the city gates. This is to prevent Wu Jie from sneaking in and harming the people. Zhao Song ordered Dugux in as he rode forward on his horse. As for Qiu Xingong, he had already led 100 cavalrymen to the counties that Wu Jie would have to pass through in order to return to the Turks. He had to inform the counties along the way to tighten their defenses. Once Wu Jie passed through, they had to immediately send out soldiers to surround him. Dugu Xian had expended a great deal of energy in the battle just now, and he had also suffered internal injuries. However, he had been unable to hold down Wu Jie, and he felt very guilty. Thus, after some simple treatment, he joined Zhao Song in searching for Wu Jie. His general obeys. Dugu Xian cupped his fists and turned his horse around to gallop toward the Cloud Mountain. Cloud Mountain had made a big fuss and carried out a carpet search in all directions. With such a big commotion, it was naturally impossible for people to not notice. When the villagers in Plum Village and Han Manor who had woken up at night saw the torches, they were all shocked. "Master, come out and see. Did something happen at Cloud Mountain?" "Oh, it's the middle of the night. What could happen?" "I'm not looking." "Something really did happen. Look, there's so many torches at the foot of Cloud Mountain." "So many torches? I'll go out and take a look." "Heavens, there really are so many torches? Could it be that some bandits have looted the Yanhuang Academy?" "No, I have to go take a look myself." "Master, what are you going to do?" "What else can I do? I'm going to help. Not only am I going alone, I have to call the rest of the villagers as well. If bandits really dare to attack Cloud Mountain, we can also lend a hand, can't we?" "Master, won't that be very dangerous?" "Hey, what do you know? Marquis is out there killing locusts, so we villagers should help Marquis protect Yanhuang College." "All right, I'm not going to waste any more time with you. Go and give me a hoe. I'll call the others." Similar scenes were playing out everywhere. Half an hour later, almost every household in the two villages had lit up their lights. Then, two groups of strong youths, each carrying shovels, hoes, and other weapons, could be seen marching toward the torches not far away. Reporting. Butler Zhao, the villagers of the Han family villa and Plum Village saw the torches here and thought that Yanhuang College was robbed, so they came over to help. The search area was slowly expanding. At this moment, an imperial guard trotted over and bowed to Zhao Song. Zhao Song frowned when he heard that. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Inform the villagers that the Turkic Grand Tutor has snuck into the college tonight. Ask them to gather the people around a search. Anyone who finds traces of the Turkic Grand Tutor will be rewarded handsomely." Yes, the Imperial Guard received the order and left. Zhao Song ordered the rest of the Imperial Guard to round him loudly. "Keep your eyes open and look around for fresh blood or traces of footsteps. We must finish searching the entire Lantian County before dawn." Chapter 15:30. Why is it so noisy in the city? Second brother, go out and take a look. Lantian County, Yon Marquis Manor. Hearing the shouts coming from outside the manor, Lu Feng couldn't help but frown. This group of personal guards of the Marquis' estate would guard the surroundings of the academy during the day. At night, they would retreat into the city to protect the safety of Li Zixuan's family. This could be considered as the last line of protection that Li Zixuan had set up for his family before he left. Yes, big brother. Luyan also faintly heard the noise coming from outside the Marquis' estate. He responded and turned around to leave. Lu Feng stood in the courtyard with his hands behind his back, frowning. He didn't know why, but his heart wasn't calm tonight. He kept feeling like something was going to happen. So even though he had fallen asleep on the bed, he was still a light sleeper. The moment there was any movement outside, he would be awakened immediately. Now that there was such a huge commotion in the city, how could he not notice it? Thus, he came out with a sword in his hand, which led to the previous conversation. Passed down the order, everyone is to be on guard and protect the safety of the Marquis' family. After a long silence, Lu Feng said to a soldier beside him, "Yes." The soldier immediately bowed and said. Instantly, the personal guards who were sleeping soundly in the Marquis' household were all woken up. Many soldiers hiding in the dark appeared in every key corner of the Marquis' household. If someone dared to sneak into the Marquis' household at this time, it would undoubtedly be courting death. Of course, The manor's guards were mobilized. Big brother. Not good. A quarter of an hour later, Lu Yun ran in a panic and said with a panicked face, "Big brother, it said that there were thieves in Yinshan tonight. Now, the imperial guards and cavalry sent by His Majesty are searching for the thieves. All the bailiffs in the city have been transferred to the city gate to prevent the thieves from sneaking into the city. That's why there's such a big commotion outside." Lu Feng's expression changed. What? The academy was robbed? How is that possible? The academy has Mr. M.O. Which thief is so daring? Hearing Lu Feng ask this, Lu Yun swallowed his saliva and said with difficulty, "Big brother, it's the Tuju Estate teacher Wu Jia, Senior Mo, Senior Zhang San, and the two Dugu generals who rushed to the rescue were all seriously injured, and the academy's confidential information was also stolen by Wu Jia." What? Tuju Estate teacher? When Lu Feng heard that, he was shocked. He quickly asked, why would the Tujue Imperial Preceptor appear in Cloud Mountain? What was the situation in the academy? Are there any students injured? Although Lu Feng had not been following Li Zixuan for a long time, he knew very well that Yanhuang College was Li Zixuan's favorite. Apart from his family, Li Zixuan cared about the college the most. It could even be said that the college and Li Zixuan's family occupied the same position in Li Zixuan's heart. Lu Yun had a bitter face and said, "Big brother, how would I know?" The bailiffs in the city also received orders from above to mobilize in full force. Lu Feng anxiously paced 2 steps on the spot and said, "No, we have to go to Cloud Mountain to take a look." Before Marquis left, he entrusted the safety of his family and the academy's teachers and students to us. Now that something like this has happened, it is our negligence. We have to confirm the academy's current situation as soon as possible and send a message to Marquis. If I remember correctly, doesn't the academy have a telegraph that can send messages from 1,000 miles away? In this kind of emergency, we can borrow it. Lu Yun thought for a moment and said, "Big brother, I think you are overthinking it. With such a big thing happening, with His Highness Wei Wang's intelligence, he will definitely send the news to Marquis through the telegraph. Who knows? Maybe Marquis is already on his way back to Chang'an." What? The academy was attacked? Xian Er's academy was attacked? At this moment, a cry of surprise came from the corner of the wall. Lu Feng and Lu Yun looked towards the direction of the voice and saw Li Jingma, dressed in a single layer of clothing, standing in front of the courtyard that connected the east courtyard to the front courtyard and walking towards them. Li Jingma had coincidentally heard someone talking in the front courtyard when he woke up in the middle of the night. Out of curiosity, he came over to listen. Who knew that he would hear such a big piece of news? Old Master. Lu Feng and Lu Yun hurriedly went forward and greeted him with cupped fists. Li Jingma waved his hand and asked with a solemn face, "General Lu, you just said that the academy was attacked. Is that true?" Lu Feng had a difficult expression. In the end, he could not withstand Li Jingma's aggressive gaze and could only admit, "This is also the news that we heard from the bailiffs in the city. As for whether it is true or not, we will only know after making a trip to Cloud Mountain." Li Jingma hurriedly said, "Then please make a trip to Cloud Mountain quickly and check on the academy's current situation. If it is true, immediately send a message to Xian Er." "Yes, Old Master." Lu Feng and Lu Yun cupped their fists and turned to leave. "Father, what happened?" "Yes, Old Master. What's going on? Why did the 2 generals and the residents leave in a hurry?" At this time, Han Yushi and Madame Li walked out of the east and west courtyards at the same time and asked Li Jingma one after another. Hearing this, Li Jingma recovered from his thoughts and hurriedly said, "It's nothing. It's nothing. Madame, Yushi, both of you go back to sleep." Li Jingma did not want Han Yushi and Madame Li to know such bad news. Otherwise, the 2 of them would probably not be able to sleep tonight. However, how could Madame Li not see that Li Jingma was insincere after decades of mutual help? She asked with a look of disbelief, "Old Master, if it's nothing, why did the 2 generals leave the residence in a hurry? Don't hide it from us. What happened?" "Yes, Father. I vaguely heard the word academy just now. Did something happen at the academy? Han Yushi also hurriedly asked at this time. As Lisa Xuan's pillow. How could Han Yushi not know the importance of Yinhuang College in Lisa Xuan's heart? Li Jingma helplessly closed his eyes. After a moment of silence, he sighed and said, "Sigh. Forget it. Forget it. I know I can't hide it from you, so I won't hide it from you." The academy. Something did happen. Second brother, you go to the academy alone to confirm the situation. I'll take the rest to guard the house of Marquis. On the streets of Yong, and lane in Lantian County, Lu Feng, who was about to rush to Yunshan, suddenly stopped and said. Lu Yin was stunned when he heard this and asked subconsciously, "Big brother, why? Didn't you just say we'll go together?" Lu Feng shook his head and said, "We can't all go. Since the Tuju estate preceptor stole the confidential information of the academy, it means that he is interested in Marquis knowledge. You have to know that in this world, other than Yinhuang College that stores Marquis knowledge, there is another place, and that is the House of Marquis. The attack on the academy is already a dereliction of duty on our part. We absolutely can't allow the Marquis family to be harmed as well. Otherwise, we'll really die 1,000 deaths." Hearing this, Lu Yun couldn't help but nod and said, "Big brother, you're really considerate, but if Wu Jie really comes, big brother, you won't be his opponent. No, I have to stay and guard the house of Marquis with big brother." Although this guy's brain was a little slow, he wasn't stupid. He could still think of the problems that he should think of. Lu Feng frowned and scolded. "Nonsense. The house of Marquis is important, but so is the academy. Quickly go to the academy to check. That Wu Jie fought in the academy and must have consumed a lot of his strength. He might not have the guts to come to the city again. You can leave without worry." But Lu Yin was still a little worried, but Lu Feng mercilessly interrupted. "But what? If you don't go now, I'll beat you up." As soon as this was said, Lu Yun immediately cowered. He shrunk his neck and quickly ran away. Okay. I'll go. Really? Aren't I just worried about you? You took my kindness for granted." Beep, 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 beep. Yamacho, turn on the telegraph. Cloud Mountain, student dormitory. Little Fatty came back from the palace again and hurriedly went back to the dormitory to pass on Lisa Xuan's latest decree. However, after he sent out the telegram, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. Lisa Xuan didn't give him any response. This made little Fatty secretly anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He could only send out the telegram again and pray in his heart that Lisa Xuan would reply as soon as possible. "Chinke, I think you should wait until dawn to send it. I'm guessing that Yamacho should be on the way and can't hear the sound of the telegraph." Seeing this, Qin Huayu couldn't help but advise. Li Tai frowned. "It's because of this that I need to get in touch with Yamacho as soon as possible. If he knows that the academy was attacked, he will definitely be anxious and rush to Chang'an, but Shouyang is more than 800 li away from Chang'an. How can he rush back in a day or two? Although the academy is now heavily damaged, Wu Jie is gone and the academy is almost safe. Yamacho doesn't have to be so anxious." Qin Huayu nodded thoughtfully and said, "That is indeed the case. But with Yamacho's temper, if he knows the current situation of Cloud Mountain, I'm afraid he will be even more anxious." Li Tai sighed helplessly and said, "Sigh. There's nothing we can do." When Imperial Father learned that the Academy's information was stolen, he was very angry, especially about Yamacho's decision to let Wu Jie go. "If it weren't for my Imperial Mother interceding for Yamacho, I'm afraid Imperial Father would have already punished Yamacho. If Yamacho can't get the Academy's information back, I'm afraid Imperial Father will." At this point, Li Tai suddenly stopped, but the meaning behind his words was obvious to everyone in the room. That Wu Jie is so strong, Yamacho will definitely suffer a loss against him. Yuchi Baolin scratched his head and suddenly said. Hearing this, everyone in the dormitory looked at Yuchi Baolin with admiration. One must know that this simple and honest young man in front of them was someone who had withstood Wu Jie's beating. After today's battle, even students who didn't know anything about martial arts now understood how strong Wu Jie was. And Yuchi Baolin was actually able to last 2 or 3 rounds against Wu Jie. How could they not admire him? Huh? What's wrong with you guys? Seeing everyone looking at him, Yuchi Baolin opened his mouth and said with a dumbfounded expression. Li Tai said helplessly, "It's nothing. We just didn't expect Baolin to be so resistant to beatings. Even the Tuju estate teacher could withstand it." Hearing Li Tai praise himself, Yuchi Baolin laughed and said, "Hey, actually, that Tuju estate teacher didn't use his full strength when he hit me. Well, it's just that I didn't use my full strength when he hit me." Hearing this, everyone was speechless and almost fainted on the ground. Beep, beep, beep. At this moment, a burst of rapid sound from the telegraph woke up Li Tai, who was talking with Qin Huayu and the others. Yamacho replied. Li Tai's face lit up, and he quickly turned to the telegraph and quickly replied, "Yamacho, Wu Jie has escaped. The injured elders and children in the academy have all been sent to Dr. Sun for treatment." Little Fatty came back from the palace again and hurriedly went back to the dormitory to convey Li Zishuan's latest decree. However, after he sent out the telegram, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. Li Zishuan had not given him any response. This made Little Fatty secretly anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He could only send the telegram over and over again and pray that Li Zishuan would reply as soon as possible. "Chinke, I think you should wait until dawn to send it. I guess Yamacho should be on the way and can't hear the sound of the telegraph." Seeing this, Qin Huayu couldn't help but advise. Li Tai frowned and said, "That's why I have to get in touch with Yamacho as soon as possible. If he knows that the academy was attacked, he will definitely be anxious and rush to Chang'an. But Shouyang is more than 800 miles away from Chang'an. How can he rush back in a day or two? Although the academy is now heavily damaged, Wu Jie is gone and the academy is almost safe. Yamacho doesn't have to be so anxious." Qin Huayu nodded thoughtfully and said, "That's true. But with Yamacho's temperament, if he knows about Yunshan's current situation, I'm afraid he will be even more anxious." Li Tai sighed helplessly and said, "AI, there's nothing we can do. When Imperial Father learned that the Academy's information was stolen, he was very angry, especially about Yamacho's decision to let Wu Jie go. If it weren't for my Imperial Mother interceding for Yamacho, Imperial Father would have punished Yamacho. This time, if Yamacho can't get the Academy's information back, I'm afraid Imperial Father." At this point, Li Tai suddenly stopped, but the meaning behind his words was obvious to everyone in the room. That Wu Jie is so powerful. Yamacho will definitely be at a disadvantage against him. Yuchi Baolin scratched his head and suddenly said. Hearing this, everyone in the dormitory looked at Yuchi Baolin with admiration. One must know that this simple and honest young man in front of them was someone who had withstood Wu Jie's beating. After today's battle, even students who didn't know anything about martial arts now understood how powerful Wu Jie was. And Yuchi Baolin was actually able to last 2 or 3 rounds against Wu Jie. How could they not admire him? Huh? What's wrong with you guys? Seeing everyone looking at him, Yuchi Baolin opened his mouth and asked with a confused expression. Chapter 1531. Don't tell Yamacho yet. Dr. Sun's medical skills are superb. Who knows, he might be able to help Teacher Wenji recover completely. If you tell Yamacho the truth about the situation here, it will only make Yamacho anxious. Not to mention, His Majesty has given Yamacho such a dangerous mission. We can't help Yamacho, but we can't distract Yamacho, otherwise Yamacho will be in danger. Yanwang College, Dormitory 001. Qin Huayu advised in a sincere and heartfelt manner. Yuchi Baolin also nodded and agreed. Yes. Huayu is right. My father said before that when masters fight, victory and defeat is often decided in the blink of an eye. If Yamacho is distracted by Teacher Wenji's injury, their chances of winning against Wu Jie will be even lower. Among the 4 people present, Yuchi Baolin had the most right to speak about matters between martial artists. Hearing him say this, Li Tai couldn't help but nod. All right then, we won't tell Yamacho about Teacher Wenji's condition for now. After saying that, Li Tai lowered his head and began to send a telegram to Li Zixuan. Yamacho, although Teacher Mo and the two generals were seriously injured by Wu Jie after Dr. Sun's treatment, their lives are not in danger. They just need to rest for a few more days. As for Teacher Wenji, because Baolin acted as a meat shield for Teacher Wenji only suffered some minor injuries. After being treated by Dr. Sun, Teacher Wenji is fine. Please rest assured, Yamacho. Beep, beep, beep. On the other end of the telegram, Li Zixuan waited for a long time for Li Tai's message. However, he didn't suspect anything because Li Tai's typing speed was relatively slow. After translating the contents of the telegram in his mind, Li Zixuan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It was good that everything was fine, as long as the teachers and students of the academy were fine. This was a rare piece of good news for him. Yes, that's it for now. I can't rush back to the academy for the time being. Qingke, have the students prepare for the final exam. We must personally return the humiliation that Yin Huang College suffered today to the Turks. After pausing for a moment, Li Zixuan pressed the button of the telegraph machine and used a very firm tone to speak to Li Tai. A moment later, on the other side, Li Tai looked at the translated contents of the telegram. His emotions surged, and he remained silent for a long time. At this moment, Yang Kai couldn't help but think back to 2 hours ago, when an old man had faced the peerless master Wu Jie, pointing to the heavens and earth, fearlessly uttering those words. This old man was originally a scholar. I knew the 4 books and 5 classics. I was familiar with the records of the Grand Historian and the Book of Han. He was penniless with only a few pieces of cloth clothing. I only have a few hundred students, and that is my greatest asset in this life. This old man respects heaven and earth, respects morality, and fears the hearts of the people. You are just a barbarian. How can I be intimidated by you? This old man knows that your martial arts are high and that you are invincible, but today I want to see what you can do to me. Riches and honor cannot be swayed. Poverty cannot be swayed. Might cannot be bent. The old man had used his lofty and unyielding character to explain to the students of the academy what it meant to be might cannot be bent. However, although peerless martial arts might not be able to make the old man bow and bend his knees, time was unforgiving. The old man was already 82 years old this year. In this era of underdeveloped medical technology, those who could live to this age were definitely rare existences. How could the old man withstand such injuries at his age? Even if he had Yuchi Baolin as a meat shield when he was sent flying by Wu Jie's attack, Li Gang's body still couldn't withstand it. The reason why he had been so strong before was entirely because he was relying on his willpower to hold on. Later, when Wu Jie left with the academy's confidential information, the old man not only felt guilty, but his willpower had also dissipated. Once the students left, his body naturally couldn't hold on any longer. At this time, he was in Sun Simiao's courtyard for emergency treatment. Let's go see Teacher Wenji. After sending a telegram and agreeing to Li Zixuan's request, Li Tai stood up in low spirits and said to the people next to him. Qin Huayu hesitated and said, "It's almost 4 o'clock now. If we go and Teacher Wenji wakes up, he will definitely blame us. The old man's body isn't good, so we should try to minimize his mood swings as much as possible." Hearing this, Sun Zifan nodded and said, "Huayu is right. Let's take advantage of lunch tomorrow to visit Teacher Wenji." Li Tai also felt that the two's words were reasonable, so he nodded and said, "Good. We'll visit him tomorrow. As for now, let's all go to sleep." The next day, early morning, outside Taiji Palace. Although it wasn't time for the morning court yet, many civil and military officials had already gathered outside Taiji Palace. Although the Yun Mountain scripture had caused an uproar last night, there hadn't been much movement in Chang'an City. At most, there might be some movement when Zhao Song led more than 2,000 imperial guards and 300 cavalry out of the city. Therefore, the civil and military officials living in Chang'an City didn't know that Yun Mountain had experienced a life and death crisis last night. It's time for the morning court. All officials enter the court for an audience. As the red clouds of dawn began to appear in the eastern sky, a eunuch walked out of Taiji Palace and shouted at the officials at the foot of the stairs. The civil and military officials immediately quieted down and walked up the stairs to Taiji Palace. After entering Taiji Palace and greeting each other, the officials realized that something was wrong. Today's morning court seemed to be more depressing than usual, and the source of this depressing feeling came from Li'er. Li'er's entire body seemed to emit a gloomy aura. Some of the braver generals, such as Cheng Yaojin, couldn't help but secretly look up at Li'er. They saw that Li'er's face was dark, as if someone owed him money. What surprised old Cheng even more was that Li'er's eyes were as dark as a panda's. It was obvious that he didn't sleep well last night. Could it be that His Majesty and the Empress are at odds? Cheng Yaojin couldn't help but mutter in his heart. However, he could only think this in his heart and didn't dare to say it out loud. Old Cheng still knew the severity of the matter. Today, in front of all my beloved officials, I announce an important matter. There was no such thing as officials. If you have something to report, court will be dismissed. After the officials finished greeting each other, Li'er directly spoke with a solemn face. Although the officials had doubts in their hearts, no one dared to ask. They could only say in unison, "We are all ears." Li'er looked around and then said something shocking. "I have decided to officially declare war on the Turks. The officials of the 6 departments of the imperial court will enter a state of full preparation for war. The officials of the 6 departments should work together and clean up an army that can go to war at any time in the shortest time possible." Silence. The moment Li'er finished speaking, the hall was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone's breathing quickened and their eyes widened. This news from Li'er's mouth was truly too explosive. The Turks. Li'er actually wanted to make a move against the Turks at this time. After the silence, there was a fierce debate. The officials in the hall whispered to each other, and then Zhang Sun Wuji stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, the Great Tang's Guangzhong region is currently being ravaged by locusts, and the imperial court is focusing all its efforts on disaster relief. At this juncture, how can we still have the manpower, material, and financial resources to fight to the death with the Turks? Your Majesty, please reconsider your actions." It had to be said that Zhang Sun Wuji's thinking was still very clear. At this time, the Great Tang's internal calamity had yet to be completely resolved. It was already good that the Turks didn't take this opportunity to attack the Great Tang. However, Li'er actually wanted to take the initiative to start a war between the two countries. Wasn't this branding? Thus, as a subject, Zhang Sun Wuji felt that he had the responsibility to help Li'er eliminate this dangerous idea. The Turks were powerful, and they had millions of soldiers. How could it be so easy to defeat them? Duke of Zhao is right. Our Great Tang's internal calamity has yet to be resolved. So how can we take the initiative to provoke external enemies? Besides, a war between countries not only requires the mobilization of manpower, but also a huge amount of resources and financial resources. These aren't things that can be done in a short period of time. Thus, I hope that Your Majesty will reconsider the matter of declaring war. Fang Xianling also stood out and clasped his hands towards Li'er. "We agree. We agree." Then, a group of officials followed behind and seconded the motion. They didn't know what had gotten into Li'er today to suddenly do such a thing, but everyone knew that this wasn't a good time to start a war with the Turks. Thus, the officials all bowed and seconded the motion, hoping that Li'er would change his mind. This old subject agrees. Cheng Yaojin grinned. Although he really wanted to fight, he never wanted to lose a battle. In the current situation of the Great Tang, if they rashly started a war with the Turks, they would definitely lose. Thus, old Cheng, this warmonger, also stood out at this time. Everyone knows that this isn't the right time for the Great Tang to attack the Turks. That's why the Turks dared to brazenly sneak into Yanhuang College, injure the guards, teachers, and students of the college, and steal many precious books and manuscripts. The more Li'er heard, the angrier he became. When he saw that even Cheng Yaojin stood out to persuade him not to start a war, he finally couldn't help but slap the table and roar angrily. Wong. This was truly a case of one wave rising after another. Those officials who had been immersed in the shock of hearing that Li Er was going to attack the Turks were now completely dumbfounded by Li Er's other piece of news. What? Turks actually sneaked into Yanhuang College? Li Er's entire body seemed to emit a gloomy and cold aura. Some of the bolder generals, such as Cheng Yaojin, couldn't help but secretly look up at Li Er. They saw that Li Er's face was dark, as if someone owed him money. What surprised old Cheng even more was that Li Er's eyes were as dark as a panda's. It was obvious that he didn't sleep well last night. Could it be that His Majesty and the Empress had a quarrel? Cheng Yaojin couldn't help but mutter in his heart. However, he could only think such words in his heart and didn't dare to say them out loud. Old Cheng still knew the severity of the matter. Today, in front of all my beloved subjects, we announce an important matter. There is no such thing as all my subjects. If you have something to report, court will be dismissed. After all the officials finished their greetings, Li Er directly spoke with a dark face and a serious expression. Although the officials had doubts in their hearts, no one dared to ask. They could only say in unison, "We are all ears." Li Er looked around and then said something shocking. "We have decided to officially declare war on the Turks. The officials of the 6 departments of the Imperial Court will enter a state of full preparation for war from today onwards. The officials of the 6 departments should work together and clean up an army that can go to war at any time in the shortest time possible." Silence. As soon as Li Er finished speaking, the hall immediately became so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone's breathing quickened and their eyes widened. This news from Li Er's mouth was really too explosive. Turks. Li Er actually wanted to attack the Turks at this time. After the silence, there was a fierce debate. The officials in the hall whispered to each other. Then, Zhongsun Wuji stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, the Great Tang's Guanzhong area is currently wreaking havoc. The Imperial Court is focusing all its efforts on disaster relief. At this juncture, how can we still have the manpower, material, and financial resources to fight to the death with the Turks? Your Majesty, please reconsider your actions." It had to be said that Zhongsun Wuji's thoughts were still very clear. At this time, the Great Tang's internal calamity had yet to be completely resolved. It was already good that the Turks didn't take this opportunity to attack the Great Tang. However, Li Er actually wanted to take the initiative to start a war between the two countries. Wasn't this branding them? Thus, as a subject, Zhongsun Wuji felt that he had the responsibility to help Li Er eliminate this dangerous idea. The Turks were powerful and had millions of soldiers controlling their bowstrings. How could it be so easy to defeat them? Duke of Zhao is right. Our Great Tang's internal calamity has yet to be resolved. How can we take the initiative to provoke external enemies? Furthermore, a war between countries not only requires manpower, but also a huge amount of resources and financial resources. These aren't things that can be done in a short period of time. Thus, I hope that Your Majesty will reconsider the matter of declaring war. Fang Xianling also stood out and clasped his hands towards Li Er. Your subjects agree. Your subjects agree. Then, a group of officials followed behind and seconded the motion. They didn't know what had gotten into Li Er today to suddenly do such a thing, but everyone knew that this wasn't a good time to start a war with the Turks. Thus, the officials all bowed and seconded the motion, hoping that Li Er would change his mind. This old subject agrees. Cheng Yaojin grinned. Although he really wanted to fight, he never wanted to lose a battle. In the current situation of the Great Tang, if they rashly started a war with the Turks, they would definitely lose. Thus, old Cheng, this warmonger, also stood out at this time. Everyone knows that this isn't the right time for the Great Tang to attack the Turks. That's why the Turks dared to brazenly sneak into Yanhuang College, injure the guards, teachers, and students of the college, and steal many precious books and manuscripts. The more Li Er listened, the angrier he became. When he saw that even Cheng Yaojin stood out to persuade him not to start a war, he finally couldn't help but slap the table and roar angrily. Wong. This was truly a case of one wave rising after another. The officials who had just been immersed in the shock of Li Er's plan to attack the Turks were now completely dumbfounded by Li Er's other piece of news. What? There were Turks sneaking into Yanhuang College? Chapter 1532. Cheng Jijia, Yuqi Jingda, Qin Xiong. I order the three of you to choose 10,000 elite light cavalry from your respective camps. You are to set out from Chang and head north to pursue the Turkic state teacher and rendezvous with the Marquis of Yong'an. We have already ordered the Marquis of Yong and to keep Wu Jie in the Great Tang. From Chang and to the north, all soldiers in the various provinces will be under the command of the Marquis of Yong. The 10,000 light cavalry that the three of you are to lead must cooperate with Li Zishuan at a crucial moment. You must capture Wu Jie and retrieve the Academy's secret information. If any Turkic soldiers enter the Great Tang to assist the Turks, you are to wipe them out. There is no need to report to us. In Taiji Palace, Li Er's firm and sonorous voice echoed in every corner of the hall. A cold-blooded and austere atmosphere gradually filled the air. All the officials could not help but turn solemn. Everyone knew that war was about to come. If they couldn't capture Wu Jie, Li Er would definitely gather his soldiers and head north, directly initiating a war between the Great Tang and the Turks. Li Er would not give the Turks time to study the Academy's secret information. If they could surround Wu Jie in the Great Tang, the Turks would definitely send reinforcements. After all, Wu Jie had so much valuable information in his hands. When the time came, a fierce skirmish was certain to break out. Once the two sides began to fight, an all-out war wouldn't be far off. The sharp-eyed officials could smell the scent of war from Li Er's words. Of course, there were still quite a few officials who were surprised that Li Zishuan had received Li Er's decree so quickly. After all, everyone knew that Li Zishuan was currently in the north of the Great Tang, 700 to 800 li away from Chang'an. Wu Jie's attack on the Academy had only happened yesterday. So how could they not be surprised that Li Zishuan had received Li Er's decree so quickly? But the smart minister could figure out what was going on after thinking about it. The Academy had a telegraph. With the telegraph, the distance of hundreds of miles was nothing. The reason why Li Er hadn't sent the Great Tang's most elite cavalry, the Black Armored Army, was mainly because the Black Armored Army was made up of heavy cavalry. In terms of mobility, it was impossible for them to compare to light cavalry. Yuqi Jingda and the others were only going to pursue Wu Jie. They could resupply at any time along the way, so they didn't need to bring a lot of provisions. What they were pursuing was speed. Official Lieutenant Qi Jingda, Cheng Jijia, Qin Xiong, receives the decree. Yuqi Jingda, Cheng Yaojin, and Qin Xiong all had solemn expressions as they bowed and accepted the order. The generals of the Great Tang had never feared war. Even if the Turks were extremely powerful, even if this war had been hastily initiated by the Great Tang, so what? No power, no matter how powerful, could make the Tang bend their backs, not even the Turks. Li Er nodded. This emperor will issue an order to arrest Wu Jie in all the provinces and counties of the Great Tang, the Marquis of Yong, and set out from Shouyang and will pass by Yusi and Taiyuan. The whereabouts of the Turkic state teacher is unknown, but it's very likely that he will head north and take the shortest route to escape from the Great Tang in the shortest time possible. In order to allow the three of you to cooperate with Li Zishuan, this time, the troops can be transferred from Yanhuang College to maintain contact with Li Zishuan. As for the person to operate the telegraph, you can go to Yanhuang College to choose. Hunting down a person was different from fighting a war. First of all, no one knew where Wu Jie was, so they could only slowly search for him along the way. But once they found him, they would need to immediately surround him. Using soldiers to send messages was definitely not feasible because opportunities were fleeting. Comparatively speaking, telegraphing was the best option. Last time, when Qing Yaojin and the others went to the city to quell the rebellion, they had already experienced the huge advantage of the telegraph in terms of battlefield information. Hearing that Lier would assign another telegraph to them, Old Chung was extremely excited. He quickly bowed and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Lier nodded and said in a deep voice, "Today's morning court is over. All officials are to immediately return to the Yamen and carry out their duties. Cooperate with Yuchi Jingda, Chung Jijia, and Qin Xiong to transfer 10,000 elite light cavalry in the shortest time possible. There must be no mistakes." After arranging the official matters, Li Er didn't waste any time and decisively announced the end of the court. In fact, he had wanted to tell all the officials about these arrangements last night, but in the middle of the night, it was a little unrealistic to gather all the officials in the palace, so he waited until now. Last night, the imperial army led by Zhao Song had searched the vicinity of Chang and city for an entire night, but they couldn't find any trace of Wu Jie, which meant that Wu Jie had most likely already escaped from Chang'an City. How could Lier not be worried? Right now, the most important thing for him was to catch Wu Jie. Everything else could be put aside for later. Hearing this, the officials were stunned, but seeing Lier's unusually strong attitude today, no one dared to raise any objections. They could only cup their hands and say, "This subject obeys the decree." The morning court lasted less than a quarter of an hour from start to finish. This could be said to be the shortest morning court since the establishment of the Great Tang Empire. At the same time, the news of the attack on Yanhuang College last night had already spread. After all, the Imperial Court's army had been searching for Wu Jie last night, causing such a big commotion that it was impossible to completely keep it a secret. Especially with so many people joining the search for Wu Jie in the early hours of the morning, word of the attack on Yanhuang College was no longer a secret. Early in the morning, the streets, tea houses, and restaurants were abuzz with discussions about this matter. Did you hear? Yanhuang College was attacked by an unknown person last night. What? There is such a thing? Which thief is so bold as to attack Yanhuang College? Aren't they afraid of being punished by His Majesty? That person isn't Tang. I heard that he's a Turkic. What? A Turkic dares to come to Great Tang and cause trouble? Did they catch him? Of course not. That's not an ordinary Turkic. It's said that he's the Turkic state teacher, the most powerful person in the world today. It's actually the Turkic state teacher. But why would the Turkic state teacher attack Yanhuang College? What else could it be? It must be that the Turkic state teacher took a fancy to the Marquis of Yong'an's knowledge. Marquis's knowledge? That Turkic state teacher is truly despicable. He isn't as smart as Marquis, but he still wants to steal from Great Tang. Truly despicable. Then did the Turkic state teacher steal anything from Yanhuang College? I don't know about that. A man's wealth is his own ruin. Yanhuang College has countless treasures and advanced knowledge, but he didn't have the ability to protect them. In the end, he gave them to the Turkic state teacher, the Marquis of Yong, and is a sinner of Great Tang. Bullshit. What are you saying? Do you know how powerful the Turkic state teacher is? In order to protect the secrets of Yanhuang College, who knows how many guards were sacrificed last night? I heard that even old teacher Wen Ji was injured. What right does a brat like you have to make sarcastic remarks here? That's right. Since Yanhuang College was established, how many useful things have they discovered? It said that it won't be long before Lantian County can get electricity and electric lights. Now that the Turkic state teacher attacked the academy, instead of blaming the Turkic state teacher, you're blaming the Marquis of Yong. Are you a Tang or a Turkic? Is your heart red or black? That's right, that's right. The majority of the populace sympathized with the academy and condemned the Turkic state teacher, but there were also many who took the opportunity to slander Yanhuang College, and most of them were Confucian scholars. Similar remarks could be heard everywhere, but in the end, they were all drowned out by the saliva of the populace. It's here. Esteemed guest, here's your food and Jian'an spring stew. In a restaurant in Taiyuan, a waiter was carrying a large plate with a bowl of Yangshan noodles, 2 side dishes, and a jug of fine wine on it. He came to a table and spoke enthusiastically to a travel-worn young man sitting at the table as he served the dishes on the table. Put it down. The young man remained unmoved by the delicacies and fine wine. His brows were still furrowed, as if he was thinking about something. "All right, esteemed guest, if you have any instructions, feel free to call me." After placing down the delicacies and fine wine, the waiter tactfully bowed and retreated. Even though the young man before him looked travel-worn, his clothes and accessories didn't seem like they came from an ordinary family. He couldn't wait to curry favor with him, so how could he offend him? But what left the waiter puzzled was the bulging bag on the young man's back. He didn't know what was inside, but he couldn't bear to put it down even when he was eating. It was truly bizarre. Furthermore, after placing down the delicacies and fine wine, the young man didn't seem to have any intention of eating. He simply sat there quietly, his eyes unfocused as he stared ahead. The waiter, who had returned to the counter of the restaurant, couldn't help but mutter to himself that the young man was truly bizarre. The shortest route from Chang and to the Turks is through Fengzhou, Ningzhou, Qingzhou, and then the Huaiyuan region into the steppe. Fortunately, I happen to be in the north of the Great Tang and can lay down an inescapable net for the Turks. The young man did not say a word as he thought to himself. Yes, this young man was Li Zixuan. Since the academy was no longer in any danger and Lier had ordered him to keep the Turks in Great Tang, there was no need for him to rush back. What he needed to do now was to find a way to intercept the Turks in advance. At this moment, a massive map of the empire appeared in his mind. He had planned several escape routes for Wu Jie, and in the end, he chose the middle and shortest route. He was confident that as long as Wu Jie was still intelligent, he would definitely choose this escape route, because every moment Wu Jie remained in Great Tang meant more danger. After making a plan in his mind, Li Zixuan returned to his senses and began to eat. Last night, he had galloped more than 100 li on his horse before he arrived at Taiyuan City. Now that he was hungry, he entered the city and found a restaurant to eat some food to fill his stomach. It was also a good opportunity for Big White to eat and rest. During the Tang Dynasty, there was a phenomenon of Tokyo, Nanjing, Beijing, and Xijing coexisting. Tokyo was Luoyang, and Xijing was the capital of Great Tang, Chang'an. Beijing was Taiyuan, and Nanjing was Chengdu. Taiyuan was the largest city in the north of Great Tang, and the city was relatively prosperous. Logically speaking, the restaurants here should have Drunken Immortal and Gentle Fragrance, but unfortunately, this restaurant had run out of Drunken Immortal and Gentle Fragrance, so Li Zixuan could only order a pot of Jianan Braised Spring to quench his thirst. It had to be said that after eating so many banquets in this life, Li Zixuan's tolerance for alcohol had inadvertently increased. Gulu gulu. After finishing his meal without a care for his image, Li Zixuan raised the wine pot and drained it in one gulp. He was finally full. "Waiter, the bill." Li Zixuan called the waiter over and tossed him 2 Tang Yuan notes. Before leaving, he asked, "How do I get to the regional commander's office?" Chapter 1533. Since it's His Majesty's decree, the Academy is naturally duty-bound. I'll get someone to bring a telegraph machine. As for the candidate to operate the telegraph machine, do the 3 generals have any students in mind that you like? Yanwang College, in the conference room on the first floor of Guanghua Building, Yin Silu and Mo Huai, who had rushed over after hearing the news, sat opposite Yuqi Jingda, Cheng Yaojin, and Qin Xiong. Li Gang, the acting Yamacho, was recuperating in another courtyard. At this time, Yin Silu heard the 3's intentions and nodded. He cupped his hands to Yuqi Jingda and the other 2. Although the telegraph machine was considered Yanwang College's top secret, Yanwang College was still located in the Tang Empire. They still had to listen to His Majesty Li Er's decree. Besides, Yin Silu had learned from Li Tai that Li Zixuan was currently besieging Wu Jie in the north, according to Li Er's decree. Yuqi Jingda and the other 2 were leading the army north to help Li Zixuan, so of course Yin Silu was 100% willing to lend the telegraph machine to Yuqi Jingda. Hearing Yin Silu's question, Cheng Yaojin grinned and said, "That Meng Wen how?" Last time, during the rebellion in Guan City, it was him and Iron Egg who followed the army to manage the telegraph machine. I think this child is willing to endure hardships, so he won't be a burden to the army if we bring him north. During the rebellion in Guan City, Meng Wenhao and Iron Egg followed the army all the way from Chang into Zhengzhou. They never complained about hardships or tiredness during the hundreds of miles of journey, which left a very good impression on Cheng Yaojin. But now that Iron Egg wasn't in the academy, Cheng Yaojin didn't hesitate to choose Meng Wenhao. Qin Xiong was also present during the battle in Guan City. He couldn't help but nod and agree. Jijia's suggestion is very good. Let's choose Meng Wenhao. This old man has heard Xiao Xian praise this child before. The two old generals of the empire were competing to praise Meng Wenhao. Yan Silu, the dean of teaching of Yanhuang College, suddenly felt his face light up. He smiled, stood up, and said, "That's good. This old man will get the telegraph machine and have someone call Meng Wenhao over for the three generals." "Thank you for your trouble, Mr. Kongwei." The three of them stood up and cupped their fists. "Of course. It's only right." Yin Silu waved his hand and left. Inside the conference room, Qin Xiong looked at Mo Huai and suddenly asked, "Mr. Mo, I heard that you fought with Wu Jie last night and suffered some injuries. Are you feeling better now?" And Mo Huai shook his head first before sighing. "This old master's injuries aren't serious, but I estimate that it will take several months for my strength to recover. Otherwise, this old master would have followed the three great generals to pursue Wu Jie. Last night, the academy was lost and all the confidential information was stolen. This old man is ashamed to face the Yamacho." "Mr. Mo, please don't say that." Qin Xiong hurriedly said, "Wu Jie is a martial grandmaster. Almost no one in the world can match him. For the safety of the academy's teachers and students, Mr. Mo fought a martial grandmaster alone and did everything he could. In the end, although Wu Jie still managed to steal the academy's information, that was not Mr. Mo's fault. Little Xian knows right from wrong, so he definitely won't blame you." And Mo Huai pursed his lips and did not speak, but the grief on his face was obvious to all. Qin Xiong also knew that he would not be able to persuade Mo Huai to change his mind with just a few words, so he did not continue to persuade him. Instead, after a moment of silence, he asked, "Of the four of us here, Mr. Mo is the only one who fought with Wu Jie. I wonder if Mr. Mo can explain a thing or two to us. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be victorious in 100 battles." The three of them were about to lead an army to pursue the Turks, so Qin Xiong felt that it was necessary to understand Wu Jie's specific strength in advance so that he could be mentally prepared. Hearing this, Cheng Yaojin and Yuqi Jingde turned their eyes to Mo Huai. After a moment of silence, Mo Huai said, "Wu Jie is extremely strong. First of all, he's the strongest person this old master has ever seen in terms of strength. In addition, this person's true qi is vigorous, and although he does not have many moves, each of his moves is filled with an indomitable, domineering aura that sometimes makes one unable to even think of resisting. Of course, the strangest thing is that this person's true qi seems to contain a trace of the power of thunder and lightning. When fighting with him, the slightest carelessness will result in the power of thunder and lightning invading one's body. If one does not use their true qi to neutralize this thunder and lightning, it will only take a moment for one's arm to completely lose feeling. So, if three great generals fight with Wu Jie, you must be careful. The power of thunder and lightning?" Hearing this, the three of them could not help frowning deeply. Cheng Yaojin muttering, "This old Cheng has never heard of secret art in this world that can allow one's true qi to produce the power of thunder and lightning. Little brother Mo, are you sure you aren't mistaken?" This old fellow was also very friendly. Speaking of which, it was not certain who was older between him and Mo Huai, but he had directly called him little brother Mo. Mo Huai did not mind this, and said firmly, "General Cheng, this old man's feeling is definitely not wrong. Last night, if this Wu Jie's secret art was not strange, and his true qi contained the power of thunder and lightning, this old man would not have been defeated so quickly. Maybe in the end, the Academy's information would not have been stolen by him. Qin Xiong looked at Cheng Yaojin and said in a low voice, Jijia, just because we haven't heard of some things doesn't mean they don't exist. Moreover, the Tujue Imperial teacher has always been mysterious and rarely shows his skills in front of the world. So it is normal that we don't know about this. But now that we know from Mr. Mo, we have to be more careful when fighting with him in the future. Cheng Yaojin had always been more convinced by Qin Xiong, so he nodded and said, of course. Hee. This old man has brought the telegraph and the students you wanted. At this time, Yin Silu's voice came from the door of the meeting room. Everyone followed the voice and saw Yin Silu and Meng Wenhao walking in one after another. Student Meng Wenhao greets Mr. Mo and the three generals. Meng Wenhao quickly cupped his hands and bowed to Mo Huai, Yuqi Jingda, and the others. The four of them waved their hands and said, No need to be so polite. Qin Xiong looked at Meng Wenhao and said with a kind face, Meng Wenhao, I believe Mr. Yin has already told you the reason we called you here today. Are you willing to accept this mission? Don't worry. Even if you don't accept, we will not blame you. Meng Wenhao did not even think and cupped his hands to Qin Xiong and said, General Qin, on the way here, Mr. Yin has already told me about the situation. I know that the generals are leading the army north to capture the Tujue and also to support Yamacho. In public, I am a student of Yanwan College. When Yamacho is in trouble, how can I not help? In private, Yamacho and I owe a debt of gratitude. If not for Yamacho's favor and promotion, I would only be an ordinary student in the Imperial College. Therefore, this student is 100% willing to follow the army to the north at any time. Good. You know how to repay kindness and be loyal. Meng Wenhao, little Xian did not misjudge you. Hearing this, Cheng Yaojin laughed heartily. Qin Xiong smiled and nodded. Since you are willing to follow the army, then go home and prepare. Tell your parents clearly so that they won't worry about you. However, time is limited, so you have to hurry. When noon comes, the army will set out. Meng Wenhao said with a solemn face, I don't have anything to prepare. As for my parents, I will leave a letter and ask someone to send it back. I can't delay the army's journey because of me. Yuqi Jingda could not help but nod in praise. Good, loyal, and see the big picture. The students taught by Yanwan College are indeed different from those Confucian scholars in the Imperial College. Yin Silu said modestly, General Yuqi is too kind. At this moment, Mo Zhong's voice came from outside the door. Mr. Mo, the Tang Daily's Liu, is outside the academy. She said she has something to discuss with young Master Meng. Yin Silu could not help but frown. Cheng Yaojin looked at Meng Wenhao with a smirk. Obviously, he knew Liu. Meng Wenhao's expression changed. He stood up and cupped his hands. Mr. Yin, this student will go and take a look. I will be back soon. Yin Silu nodded and said, Yes. Go quickly, but don't delay the military situation. Yes. Meng Wenhao replied and hurried out of the meeting room. When he arrived at the mountain gate, he saw little Fishy, who was dressed in red, standing outside the gate of the academy. The little girl seemed to have something on her mind. Her brows were slightly furrowed, and her eyes were dull. It was obvious that she was thinking about something else. Little Yua, Meng Wenhao walked out of the academy gate and came to Liu. He called out softly, Oh, you're here. Little Yu's body trembled, and she immediately came back to her senses. She smoothed the hair in front of her forehead and asked as calmly as possible, Wenhao, I heard that teacher Wenji is sick. How is he now? Meng Wenhao's expression darkened. He replied, I'm not sure. I originally planned to visit teacher Wenji at noon, but now it seems that I might have to leave Yinshan in a while. Little Yu was stunned and quickly asked, Leave Yinshan? Wenhao, where are you going? Are you going somewhere far away? Meng Wenhao thought about it and felt that many people must have known that the imperial court had sent an army north. Moreover, Liu is a Tang and probably wouldn't do something like betraying the country. Thus, he gave a concise reply. Yamacho has received orders from the emperor to mobilize the state's army in the north to intercept Wu Jie. General Yuqi, General Chung, and General Qin have been dispatched by His Majesty today to lead the army north to support Yamacho. In order to maintain contact with Yamacho, the three generals plan to bring a telegraph, and I will be the one controlling the telegraph. Wu Jie is so powerful. Will teacher be in danger? Little Yu frowned and asked worriedly. She was still used to calling Li Zixuan teacher, and not Yamacho. Meng Wenhao said uncertainly, danger? Of course there will be. That's why I agreed to go north with the army without hesitation. Now that teacher Wenji is injured, I don't want to see anything happen to Yamacho. Liu softly replied. Then, her expression became somewhat conflicted. After hesitating for a long time, she gritted her teeth and asked tentatively, Wenhao, I also want to go north with the army. Can you help me ask General Qin? Meng Wenhao was startled. He widened his eyes and asked in surprise, What? You also want to go north with the army? How can that be? Marching and fighting is a man's job. How can a girl like you go? So what if I'm a girl? Previously, Hua Mulan joined the army in place of her father. Why can't I, Li Yu, go north with the army to support teacher? Seeing Meng Wenhao's exaggerated reaction, Li Yu could not help but stomp her feet and angrily ask. Meng Wenhao did not give in to her this time. Instead, he argued, How can it be the same thing? Yamacho is indeed in danger right now, but I alone can control the telegraph. Little Yu, why do you have to go with me? You have to know that marching and fighting is very difficult. How can a weak girl like you endure it? Chapter 1534. Greetings, General Qin. Hearing a voice behind her, Little Yu panicked and hurriedly turned around. After a moment of hesitation, she bowed to Qin Xiong. Qin Xiong's expression was serious as he asked, Miss Li Yu, this old master had no intention of eavesdropping on your conversation. I just happened to pass by and overheard a few words. You said Wu Jie recognized the bracelet on your wrist. Is that true? Li Yu timidly glanced at Qin Xiong. Seeing the other party's kind expression, it didn't seem like he had any malicious intent. Besides, with her relationship with Li Zixuan, Qin Xiong shouldn't do anything to her. After hesitating for a moment, she bit her lip and nodded. And I remember that after Wu Jie saw the bracelet on my hand, his expression was obviously different from before, and he even asked me where I got this bracelet from. Senior Zhang San and Wenhao can testify to that. They both heard him ask. Meng Wenhao nodded. General Qin, that is indeed the case, but at that time the academy was already in a mess, so no one cared about such minor details. Now that I think about it, when Wu Jie looked at Little Yu-er's bracelet, the way he looked at it was indeed different. Qin Xiong nodded thoughtfully. Li Yu then added, It's just that. I'm not sure if Wu Jie knows the origin of this bracelet, because I saw a trace of confusion in his eyes. Maybe he just thought the bracelet looked familiar. But even if there's only a glimmer of hope, I still want to ask Wu Jie personally. I really want to know who my parents are and where they are now. I beg General Qin to allow Li Yu to accompany the army to the north. I know that women are not allowed in the army, so I will follow behind you from a distance. I won't affect your marching and fighting. Qin Xiong, Yuqi Jingde, and Cheng Yaojin all frowned, not immediately replying to Little Yu-er's words. Seeing this, Meng Wenhao anxiously said, General Qin, Little Yu has never seen her biological parents since she was a child. She doesn't even know who they are. Now that she finally has a clue about them, I hope General Qin can help her. Cheng Yaojin could not help but grin. Hey, brat of the Meng clan, your words are simple. But ever since my great Tang was founded, His Majesty has always ordered all generals to strictly manage the army, let alone women. Even wine is rarely seen in the army. Brat, you want us old men to bring a little girl into battle. If word of this got out, would His Majesty spare us old fellows? As soon as he finished speaking, Meng Wenhao and Li Yu couldn't help but become silent. Seeing the despair on Little Yu-er's face, Qin Xiong couldn't bear it. He paused and said, This is a serious matter, and we don't dare to act on our own. We need to report this to His Majesty. If His Majesty agrees, then we naturally won't object. Li Yu's eyes lit up, but then they dimmed again. She shook her head and said softly, "There's no need to trouble yourself. Liu is just a commoner. How could he make his majesty change the rules for him? Moreover, Liu doesn't want General Qin to be caught in the middle. Let's drop this matter." Meng Wenhao couldn't help but be stunned. He hurriedly said, "Little fishy," without waiting for him to finish. Liu interrupted, "Wenhao, there's no need to say any more. You go with General Qin. Be careful on the road. I won't delay you any longer." Finished speaking, Liu bowed to Qin Xiong, Cheng Yaojin, and Yuqi Jingde, then turned and left. The little girl was very determined to leave. She didn't even look back. But under the sunlight, her frail figure really made one's heart ache. Meng Wenhao wanted to run over and pull Liu back, but he changed his mind. Even if he pulled her back, what could he do? Lier wouldn't change the rules for a little girl like Liu. So he could only suppress the thought in his heart and stood there watching Liu leave. AI, she's also a poor child. But if this old man can meet Wu Jie on this trip, I'll definitely help Miss Liu get to the bottom of this. Qin Xiong sighed and patted Meng Wenhao's shoulder. It's getting late. Let's return to Chang and prepare the army to set out. Meng Wenhao nodded with a complicated expression. I'll listen to General Qin's orders. Snake Spirit Mountain, Heavenly Dragon Sect's headquarters. Compared to a few days ago, the current Snake Spirit Mountain was filled with large and small thatched huts. In some open spaces, there were also some soldiers training. Obviously, this place had been turned into a secret military base. At this time, in the middle of the hut. Pung, bastard. Why did the Tuju estate teacher choose to attack Yanhuang College at this time? The dragon head of the Heavenly Dragon Sect looked at the latest report from his disciple and couldn't help but slap the table in anger. Zhang Liang, who was standing below, carefully cupped his hands and said, "Dragon head, the Tuju estate teacher attacked Yanhuang College. The Tang Empire will definitely be in chaos. Li Shimin must have put all his energy into capturing Wu Jie. Isn't this good news for us? Why are you so angry?" Looking closely at Zhang Liang's right hand, there were only 3 fingers. It looked a little scary, but thinking about how the dragon head of the Heavenly Dragon Sect cut off 2 of his fingers a few days ago, this scene was not surprising. The dragon head of the Heavenly Dragon Sect turned his gaze to Zhang Liang and snorted. "What do you know? Now that Yanhuang College has been attacked, Li Zishuan will definitely rush back to the academy. With his wisdom, it is very likely that he will see through our plan in Chang'an City. At that time, once he warns Li Shimin, our plan will be exposed in advance. This king has been preparing for a long time, and it is very likely that this king will completely fail." Zhang Liang quickly bowed and said, "Dragonhead is right. This subordinate is stupid and doesn't think as far as the Dragonhead." In fact, this guy was somewhat disapproving. He felt that his Dragonhead was a little too timid, or in other words, the Iron Masked Man was overestimating Li Zishuan's ability. He more or less knew about the Heavenly Dragon Sect's plan in Chang'an City. In his view, this plan could be said to be flawless. No matter how smart Li Zishuan was, it was impossible for him to see through it. The Dragonhead pondered for a moment and asked, "Is there any news from Du Yi?" Hearing this, a strange look flashed across Zhang Liang's eyes. As a capable subordinate of the Dragonhead of the Heavenly Dragon Sect, he and Du Yi were clearly in a competitive relationship. Du Yi was favored and trusted, so he naturally felt uncomfortable in his heart. Replying to the Dragonhead, "There is still no news from the Venerable." Zhang Liang concealed the strange look in his eyes and cupped his hands. Investigate again. 4 days later is the day when the winds and clouds change. We must make him complete all the arrangements before then. The Dragonhead of the Heavenly Dragon Sect swung his sleeves and said in a deep voice, "Yes, the Tujue Imperial Advisor actually attacked Yanhuang College. The situation is getting more and more complicated. The Heavenly Dragon Sect, the Tujue, and the Great Tang are really facing internal and external troubles. I wonder how Yanhuang College is doing now. Also, what is the plan that the dragon head of the Heavenly Dragon Sect was talking about? Why is he so afraid of the Marquis of Yong? and returning early. Could it be that only the Marquis of Yong and can solve the puzzle of the Heavenly Dragon sect? On the western cliff of Serpent Spirit Mountain, Li Junxian crossed his arms as he looked down at the lush pine trees. He had eavesdropped on the conversation between the dragon head of the Heavenly Dragon sect and Judge Zhang Liang, and when he saw that Zhang Liang was about to come out, he had quietly slipped away. Li Junxian couldn't help but feel his heart sink as he recalled their conversation. The fact that the Yin Huang Academy had been attacked by the Turkic Imperial Advisor had shocked him deeply, but the words of the dragon head of the Heavenly Dragon sect made him feel that the Heavenly Dragon sect was brewing a huge conspiracy. This conspiracy was enough to topple the great Tang. At this time, Li Junxian desperately wanted to get down the mountain and send a message to Li Yer. If he delayed for a few more days, by the time the dragon head of the Heavenly Dragon sect spoke of, it would be too late. I have to think of a way to get down the mountain, or else Chang and will be in danger. Li Junxian softly muttered to himself, "Hey, Li Junxian, what are you doing here? Get back to work." An angry shout came from behind Li Junxian. He turned around and saw that it was the middle-aged man, surnamed Meng, who had brought him up Snake Spirit Mountain. Li Junxian hurriedly changed his expression and warmly welcomed him. "Lord Meng, I just want to take a piss. I'll get back to work now. Please don't be angry." Meng snorted and unhappily said, "What piss? I think you're just trying to slack off. What are you standing around for? Get back to work." Li Junxian hastily replied, Yes. I'll get back to work now." Hiya. It was near noon, and a handsome young man wearing a white short robe and a Confucian hat was galloping down the official road of Lantian County on a black steed. This young man had a bundle on his back, and his complexion was extremely fair. If one looked carefully, one would find that he was even more beautiful than the average woman. "Since I can't go north with the army, I can only go find teacher. I heard from Kingwei that teacher should be around Yusi or Taiyuan. I'll go to Taiyuan to try my luck." The handsome young man was none other than Li Yu, who had left in disguise. Compared to the disheveled lass who had just arrived in Chang, and last year, Li Yu had matured into a young lady from a prestigious family after a year of living in Chang'an. Although she still looked a little immature, she exuded a youthful charm. Previously, when she pleaded with Qin Xiong in front of Yanwan College, Li wanted to go north to find Li Zixuan. As Li Zixuan wasn't in the army, she wouldn't be in the way if she went with Li Zixuan, much less violate military rules. Moreover, given Li Zixuan's personality, he would definitely help her find out the truth. However, Li Yu also knew that it wasn't very convenient for a girl like her to go out. Thus, she disguised herself as a man and went north to find her family. "Uncle Ma," Li Yu left without saying goodbye because she had her own difficulties. "Please don't take it to heart," Li Yu muttered to himself as he galloped forward on his horse. The Uncle Ma she spoke of was naturally Ma Zhou, ever since she arrived in Chang, and the person who took care of her the most, other than Li Zixuan, was her old boss Ma Zhou. If it didn't involve her biological parents, Li wouldn't have left without saying goodbye. However, after what happened last night, there was a voice in her head that kept urging her to find the truth. Once she found the truth, she would be able to completely unravel the mystery of her birth. However, at the same time, Li was a little afraid. She was afraid that the truth she had painstakingly found would be hard to accept, because the person who knew the origin of the bracelet on her wrist wasn't a Tang person, but the famous Turkic Imperial Advisor. This caused her to have a trace of doubt in her heart. Could it be that her biological parents were Turkic people? Did they know Wu Jie in the past? This was the result that Li Yu found the most difficult to accept. Because her adoptive parents were Tang people, and in her bones, she also considered herself as a Tang person. Moreover, all the friends and elders she knew were all Tang people. If her parents were Turkic people, Li Yu really didn't know how to live with herself. However, this was only the worst result she could think of. What if her parents weren't Turkic people and had only fought with Wu Jie in the past? If that was the case, she naturally wouldn't have to worry about those questions. Holding on to the persistence of the truth and the small trace of luck in her heart, Liu mustered up the courage to go north alone to find Li Zishuan for help. At the same time, in the east of Chang and city, Yanxing Gate opened and countless armored cavalry rushed out of the city. The three old generals at the front were Yuqi Jingde, Qin Xiong, and Cheng Yaojin. These three old generals were known by everyone in Chang and city. The commoners saw that the army was orderly, and the generals at the front were Qin Xiong, Yuqi Jingde, and Cheng Yaojin, three famous generals. They couldn't help but be shocked, wondering why the imperial court would suddenly send out such an elite cavalry. Yuqi Jingjun, General Qin, and General Cheng are personally leading the troops. Where's the imperial court going to send troops? But I haven't heard of any rebellions recently. Could it be because of the Turkic state teacher? Very likely. Didn't they say that the Turkic state teacher stole the information of Yanhuang College? His Majesty definitely won't let this matter go. These cavalry are probably going to capture Wu Jie. Capture him well. The Turkic state teacher dares to act wildly in Tang. We can't let him go. We must capture him. Yes, that's right. We must capture Wu Jie. We must let the Turkic people know that the Tang people aren't easy to bully. I hope the army can win and capture Wu Jie. Victory at the start. Capture Wu Jie. The common people discussed in private. Many people had already guessed the truth of the matter. Thus, the common people became more and more agitated, shouting loudly in the back. They wanted to use this opportunity to encourage the 10,000-strong army that suddenly came out of the city. Chapter 1535. What? You want to go to that place? Impossible. I'm just a small assistant minister. I can't help you. In the west of Chang and city, in the study of a house, an old man in brown flicked his sleeves and said angrily. In front of him stood a man in a gray robe wearing a bamboo hat. The wide bamboo hat covered the man's face. The man snorted and said, "You dare to disobey the orders of His Majesty? Don't forget who gave you your position today." The old man in brown was stunned and said, "My position today was given by His Majesty. What does it have to do with you?" "His Majesty? Humph! You're really ungrateful." The man in gray sneered. "You were just a poor scholar who had no connections in Chang'an City. You lived on the streets and were about to starve to death. Who promoted you and gave you an official position? It said that those who are loyal are the butchers and those who are unloyal are the scholars. Now it seems that this saying is true." The old man in brown was scolded by the man in gray until his face turned red. He pointed at the man in gray and said angrily, "Even if I am indebted to him, it's too, but he's no longer in this world. What does it have to do with you?" The man in gray laughed and then took out something wrapped in a handkerchief. He handed it over and said, "Take a look and see what this is." The old man in brown looked at him suspiciously and then carefully took it. When he opened the handkerchief and saw what was inside, he suddenly opened his eyes wide and said, "This, Your Majesty, actually, Marquis, without His Majesty's order, I really don't dare to mobilize the troops without permission." Bing Province, Taiyuan, the provincial governor's mansion. A middle-aged man in an official's uniform smiled bitterly and said to Li Zishuan. This man was Wang Liaoyuan, the provincial governor of Bing Province. Now, Li Zishuan had encountered a rather awkward problem. Although he had obtained an imperial edict that allowed him to command the troops of the northern provinces, he couldn't show this edict to others. There was no proof. Even if he exaggerated it, no one would believe him. This was also because he was a new noble and had the emperor's favor. If it was someone else, Wang Liaoyuan would have sent the bailiffs to chase him out already. Thinking of this, Li Zishuan couldn't help but feel depressed. He said with a speechless face, "Provincial Governor Wang, this Marquis said how many times this is Majesty's decree a few hours ago. Bing Province will receive it tomorrow at the latest, but the situation is urgent. This Marquis can't wait. You have to mobilize the troops now. Could it be that you suspect this Marquis of falsifying the imperial edict?" Bing Province was more than 600 kilometers away from Chang. Even if they were to rush to Chang, and it would still take them a day and a night. But Wu Jie was a martial grandmaster. Only the heavens knew how fast he could travel. Thus, Li Zixuan was secretly anxious. Wang Liaoyuan smiled bitterly and cupped his hands. Marquis, it's not that this official doesn't believe you, but this official is powerless to mobilize the troops. You don't have an imperial edict or a warrant from the governor. Even if this official goes to the Bing province barracks, the generals there won't listen to this official's orders. Governor? Li Zixuan frowned and couldn't help but mutter in his heart. He realized that he seemed to have overlooked something and frantically searched through his memories. A moment later, he finally understood. Bing province didn't only have a provincial governor's mansion, it also had a protector general's mansion. Bing province, Taiyuan, was the place where the great Tang rose. In addition, Bing province was the largest city in the north and was relatively close to the Turks. It could be said to be an important military town. Thus, the imperial court set up a governor's mansion here and appointed a governor to oversee the military affairs of the 21 provinces of Hedong province. During Jingwan's time, there were still 41 governor's mansions in the country. Under each governor's office, there were a few prefectures under their jurisdiction. During the Tang Dynasty, there were 3 different types of military governors. They were the upper military governor, the middle military governor, and the lower military governor. The provinces and counties under each governor's mansion were of different grades and had different names. As for governors, they could directly govern other governors. The provinces under their jurisdiction had to be at least 10. The Bing province governor's mansion had been established in the 7th year of Wuda's reign. It was similar to Li Ke's province governor's mansion. It governed the military affairs of Jianan Circuit, and its power was at its peak. Unlike governors, the imperial court would normally only allow the princes of the imperial clan, such as Li Ke, or important officials of the court to hold the position of governor. This was because the position of governor was far too important. With so many soldiers under one's command, if there was a rebellion, the emperor would have to bear the consequences. However, because the princes of the imperial clan held the position of governor on a part-time basis, the ones who handled the affairs of the governor's mansion were these princes or important officials of the court. The position of head scribe was closer to that of an aide. They were good at handling practical affairs. Most head scribes didn't have a high status. However, the senior officials under the governor manor had a status equivalent to that of a provincial governor. They had real power and could even hold the position of judici. Their status was extremely high. But then again, Li Zixuan really couldn't remember who the Bing province viceroy was. After all, he didn't specialize in history in his previous life. But even if he did, he probably wouldn't know who the Bing province viceroy was in the 2nd year of Jingwan. Governor Wang. Who is this Bing province's governor? This marquis will personally pay him a visit. Li Zixuan cupped his hands and said without blushing at all. Wang Liaoyuan choked. He paused for a moment before replying. Marquis, the current governor of Bing province is Chao Guogong. I'm not in Bing province right now. Chao Guogong, Li Ji. The current Li Ji wasn't duking yet. In the 2nd year of Wuda, Su Shiji was given the title of Right Marquis General by Li Yuan. He was also given the surname Li. It wasn't until the 11th year of Jingwan that he was given the title of Duke Ing by Li Er. In the 8th year of Wuda, the Tujue invaded Bing province. The imperial court ordered Li Ji to be the general of the army and expel the Tujue at Taigu. In the 9th year of Wuda, Li Shimin ascended the throne and appointed Li Ji as the Bing province viceroy. In order to avoid Li Shimin's taboo, Li Ji removed the Shi in his name and changed his name to Li Ji. This Bing province viceroy lasted for close to 8 years. It wasn't until the 7th year of Jingwan that Prince Jin, Li Jiao, became the Bing province viceroy that Li Ji retired and acted as the head scribe of the Bing province viceroy manor. However, it was only in the first 2 years that Li Ji was in charge of military affairs in Bing province. Later on, as the world stabilized, Li Ji began to play with remote control tactics. Remote control the entire Bing province viceroy manor from the capital of Chang'an. His main purpose in doing this was to make Li Er feel at ease. After all, he controlled too many troops as the Bing province viceroy. F***CK. Hearing that the Bing province viceroy was Li Zixuan, Li Zixuan's face couldn't help but turn ugly. It was true that he knew Li Ji, but he wasn't in Bing province. Even if he knew him, what was the use? The soldiers of the Bing province barracks wouldn't listen to his orders just because he knew Li Ji. In his anger, Li Zixuan couldn't help but curse, causing Wang Liaoyuan to be dumbfounded. Clang! Thinking that Wu Jie was probably 100 or 200 li away from Chang, and Li Zixuan couldn't help but panic. He unsheathed the sword at his waist and placed it against Wang Liaoyuan's neck. The guards standing outside the door were immediately alarmed and rushed in, frantically shouting, "Protect Lord Provincial Governor!" Although they shouted this, none of them dared to step forward. After all, Li Zixuan's status was even higher than Wang Liaoyuan's. If he was accidentally injured, none of them could bear the responsibility. Facing the guards, Li Zixuan remained unmoved. He stared at Wang Liaoyuan and pretended to be cold as he said, "This marquis orders you to immediately gather 30,000 soldiers from the Bing province barracks and follow this marquis to surround the Turkic state teacher. If you dare to refuse, this marquis will kill you right now." With a sword against his neck, it was impossible for Wang Liaoyuan to not panic. However, after hearing Li Zixuan's request, he helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "Marquis, this official has already told you that the soldiers of the Bing province barracks only listen to His Majesty and the Viceroy. Even if this official goes with you, no one will listen to this official. Even if you kill this official, it won't help." He was afraid of death, but he really couldn't satisfy Li Zixuan's request. Li Zixuan was speechless. Of course, he wouldn't kill Wang Liaoyuan. He just wanted to test if this person was really helpless. Unfortunately, this Wang Liaoyuan really was helpless. Letting out a long sigh, Li Zixuan removed his long sword and put the wind-chasing sword back into its scabbard. He then said expressionlessly, "This marquis was just in a moment of desperation. I hope that Provincial Governor Wang will not take offense. You can leave first." Wang Liaoyuan waved his hand and signaled the guards to leave. He then wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and hurriedly said, "This official wouldn't dare. This official knows that marquis won't kill for no reason." Li Zixuan glanced at him and said, "Then what do you think this marquis should do now? In all of the Hedong circuit, Bing province should have the most elite soldiers, and after attacking the academy, Wu Jie will definitely flee the Great Tang as quickly as possible. If this marquis does not lead soldiers to block his path as soon as possible, I fear that we will be letting a tiger return to the mountain, burying a fatal future threat for the Great Tang." Wang Liaoyuan thought for a while and asked tentatively, "Marquis, why don't this official gather the guards in Bing province and follow you to set up the defense? When His Majesty's imperial edict arrives, the troops in Bing province will naturally be under Marquis's command." Li Zixuan said unhappily, "Guards? Wu Jie is a great grandmaster with unparalleled combat strength. Are you sending these guards who have never been on the battlefield to their deaths?" Wang Liaoyuan hurriedly said, "This official didn't mean that, sir. Your steward said that he has something to report." At this moment, a soldier hurriedly ran in from the outside and bowed as he spoke. Wang Liaoyuan frowned and said unhappily, "Bastard, can't you see that this official is talking to the Marquis of Yong'an? Get out." Yes. The soldier wanted to say something, but stopped. In the end, he cupped his hands and turned to leave. "Wait." At this moment, Li Zixuan spoke. He had a pensive look on his face as he spoke. "Governor Wang, you should let your butler in." Since he couldn't borrow any troops, he didn't want to continue talking with Wang Liaoyuan. Now that Wang Liaoyuan's steward was here, he could listen to what was so important. Hearing Li Zixuan's words without any intention of leaving, Wang Liaoyuan knew that Li Zixuan was going to listen to his family affairs. He couldn't help but feel nervous and prayed that the old steward didn't come to the magistrate court because of the trivial matters in his backyard. Otherwise, it would be so embarrassing. "Yes, Marquis." With strange thoughts, Wang Liaoyuan turned around and said to the soldier, "Did you hear that?" Marquis is merciful. Let the steward in quickly. Yes. The soldier received the order and left. After a while, an old man in his 50s came in. The old man was trembling with fear as he held a piece of bright yellow silk cloth in his hands. After he came in, he knelt down without saying a word and said, "Master, the imperial edict is here." The imperial court used the Wang family's carrier pigeon in Chang and city to send His Majesty's imperial edict. Old master, please take a look. Chapter 1536. Replying to Marquis, I am only from a side branch of the Wang clan of Taiyuan. I passed the imperial examination in the 4th year of Wuda and was promoted to the provincial governor of Bing Province by His Majesty in the 9th year of Wuda. Bing Province, provincial governor's mansion. Hearing Li Zishuan's question, Wang Liaoyuan solemnly cupped his hands and replied, I see. Li Zishuan nodded thoughtfully. I didn't expect His Majesty to use the Wang clan's carrier pigeon to deliver the imperial edict. This time, your Wang clan has done me a great favor. When this matter is over, I will personally write a letter to thank the Wang clan's patriarch. Taiyuan was the Wang clan's headquarters. It was normal to meet a few people from the Wang clan here. Thinking of this, Li Zishuan finally felt relieved. However, Li Er's choice of carrier pigeon to deliver the imperial edict was truly out of Li Zishuan's expectations. This was definitely a groundbreaking move. Looking at the history, there shouldn't be any emperor who thought of using carrier pigeon to deliver the imperial edict. Li Er's last-minute innovation was truly amazing. I also didn't expect His Majesty to use the Wang clan's carrier pigeon to deliver the imperial edict to Bing Province. Coincidentally, Marquis is in the provincial governor's mansion right now. I have to say, Marquis is truly a man of destiny. Heaven is helping him. Wang Liaoyuan couldn't help but sigh with emotion. In fact, the Wang clan of Taiyuan had a good relationship with Li Er and Li Zishuan. With Princess Tang, and the Wang clan of Taiyuan was a family to Li Er. Not to mention using the carrier pigeon. Wang Yu wouldn't refuse even if the Wang clan paid for it. And with Wang Rinbiao, the Wang clan of Taiyuan could be considered an ally to Li Zishuan. Although it wasn't to the point where they would live and die together, the two sides wouldn't refuse to take care of each other. Of course, it was because of this that Wang Liaoyuan didn't get angry when Li Zishuan placed the Wind Chaser sword on his neck. If it was someone else, it would be impossible. After all, Wang Liaoyuan was the provincial governor of a province. He still cared about his reputation. Although Li Zishuan was a marquis, he couldn't humiliate a provincial governor like this. Li Zishuan said seriously, I have the emperor's help. Now that there's an imperial edict to mobilize the troops, can I mobilize the troops of the Bing province camp? Wang Liaoyuan hurriedly cupped his fists. This official will bring Marquis to the Bing province barracks. It was all thanks to Empress Zhangsan that Li Er thought of using carrier pigeons to send the imperial edict. In the early hours of this morning, Li Tai returned to the palace from Yanhuang College and reported the situation at Yinshan to Li Er. Li Er was angry and issued an imperial edict to let Li Zishuan cooperate with the troops of the northern provinces to capture Wujie. Li Tai pleaded for mercy, but to no avail. He could only return to the college and pass on his father's edict to Li Zishuan through the telegraph. After Li Tai left the palace, Empress Zhangsun, who had been listening quietly to the side, opened her mouth. Your Majesty, the Marquis of Yong, and is now in Shouyang, which is thousands of li away from Chang'an City. Even if he gallops, he can only reach Taiyuan by dawn, which is very far from Chang'an City. If he wants to mobilize the troops in the Bing province area, he must have your imperial edict. The imperial edict sent by Qin Ke through the telegraph doesn't count, and the local officials and generals will definitely not recognize it. In the Tang Dynasty used Emperor Taizong Li Shimon's 2 steps, 1 step each on the left and right feet, as the standard. It was called step, and 300 steps was 1 li. 1/5 of a step was 1 qi. According to historical records, a qi in the Tang Dynasty was 0. 303 meters, and 1 li was 454. 2 meters. So 6 or 700 kilometers in the modern era was more than 1,000 li in the Tang Dynasty. At that time, when Lier heard this, he felt that it made sense and couldn't help frowning. Chang'an City is 800 kilometers away from Taiyuan City. Even at top speed, it would take at least a day and a night. But in that time, with Wu Jie's martial grandmaster cultivation, wouldn't he have already left Taiyuan City? No, we can't let him leave the Tang Dynasty with the secret information of the academy. At the end, Lier couldn't help but punch the dragon pillar beside him. Seeing this, Empress Zhongxuan's eyes flashed. She stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, I have a way to get the imperial edict to Taiyuan as soon as possible. If Li Zishuan happens to be in Taiyuan, that would be even better. If he isn't, we can ask the Bingzhou provincial governor to send someone to find Li Zishuan on a fast horse." Hearing this, Li Er's eyes suddenly lit up. He said with surprise, "Oh, Guanyin, what wonderful plan do you have? Tell me." Empress Zhongxun smiled and said, "What wonderful plan can I have? Your Majesty is just confused and didn't think of it. Actually, this matter is very simple. Your Majesty, do you still remember who the current Bingzhou provincial governor is?" Lier frowned and seriously thought for a while before replying. "If I remember correctly, the Bingzhou provincial governor should be Wang Liaoyuan. In the 9th year of Wuda, Lier usurped the throne. Wang Liaoyuan was made the Bingzhou provincial governor by Lier that year, so Lier had some impression of him." Empress Zhongxun smiled faintly and said, "That's right. Your Majesty, do you know that Wang Liaoyuan is from the Wang family of Taiyuan? The Wang family of Taiyuan has many carrier pigeons in their mansion in Chang'an." Lier was smart and instantly understood what Empress Zhongxun wanted to express. He raised his brows and said in surprise, "Guanyin wants me to use the Wang family's carrier pigeon to send the imperial decree to Bingzhou provincial governor Wang Liaoyuan and then have him pass it to Li Zishuan. Is that right?" Carrier pigeons were mainly used to send messages by the nature of carrier pigeons. They didn't return to their nests for the sake of sending messages. Therefore, they could only bring the pigeons out and release them to send messages back to their nests. The carrier pigeons of the Wang family of Chang were brought out from the Wang family's contact points in the various provinces. It was because of this that Lier could use carrier pigeons to quickly send the imperial edict to Wang Liaoyuan. "Your Majesty is wise." Empress Zhongxun nodded and said with a smile. Lier couldn't help but laugh loudly. "Haha, good. Use the carrier pigeons of the Wang family." Wu Jie probably never dreamed that I would prepare an inescapable trap for him at the border of the Tang Turks. Bang! Ouch! In Qing province, on the official road outside Anhua County, a dirty little beggar ran too fast and accidentally bumped into a black-clothed man wearing a bamboo hat. Because the force was mutual, the little beggar was knocked to the ground by the reaction force. Then he rolled like a carp and stood up. With a face full of panic, he bowed and apologized to the black-clothed man. "Hero, spare me. Hero, spare me. I didn't mean to bump into you." He saw that the black-clothed man had a mace on his back and was dressed like a martial artist, so he subconsciously thought that the man was a hero who knew martial arts. The black-clothed man stood still, and behind him stood 4 other men in black. After a moment of silence, the black-clothed man stretched out a hand and said, "Give me my money pouch, and I'll spare your life." His voice was abnormally hoarse, like a demon from hell. The little beggar was frightened and couldn't help but take 2 steps back. He stuttered, What money pouch? You want to take advantage of the situation?" The black-clothed man coldly said, "I don't want to say it a second time." Although the little beggar's little action, when he bumped into him, was very subtle, how could it escape his eyes? He was a top martial artist in the world. Hearing this, the little beggar suddenly felt weak. He hesitantly took out a brown purse from his sleeve and handed it over. Wu Jie took it, but the little beggar suddenly knelt down on the ground and looked up at the black-clothed man, begging, "Brother Wu Jie, please don't hesitate to ask for my help. Hero, I didn't mean to steal your money pouch. My mother is sick, and the doctors in the city need money to treat her. I can't earn that much money, but my mother's condition is getting worse and worse. I beg Hero to take pity on me and give me some money to save my mother." The black-clothed man didn't lower his head, still looking straight ahead. After a long silence, he put his right hand into his money pouch and pulled out 2 soybean-sized golden beans. He bent down and patted the little beggar's palm, then said, "Scram." In his words, there wasn't the slightest bit of righteousness that one would have when doing favors to others. Instead, it was more of impatience. However, the little beggar wasn't unhappy because of the black-clothed man's attitude, because he received 2 golden beans. "Thank you, Hero. Thank you, Hero. I'll scram now." The little beggar cried tears of joy. He kowtowed 3 times to the black-clothed man, then got up and quickly left. The black-clothed man took the 4 people behind him and walked towards Anhua County. He planned to replenish his rations in the city. "Giddy, Giddy. Chong, an urgent report. The Tujue imperial tutor has sneaked into Tang Dynasty and is currently fleeing to the north. Citizens, quickly look at Wu Jie's portrait and provide information on his whereabouts. Anyone who can find him will be rewarded 1,000 strings of cash." At this moment, a soldier suddenly rushed out from the south side of the official road. The soldier shouted as he galloped on his horse. By the time he finished speaking, the man and horse had already passed the black-clothed man's current position and were heading towards Anhua County. "Reward 1,000 strings of cash. Is this real?" Chang'an sent an urgent report. "How can it be fake? Let's go take a look." "Yes, we have to go take a look. What if I saw the Tujue imperial tutor? 1,000 strings of cash. With a great reward, there will be brave men." The reward of 1,000 strings of cash caused the citizens to go into an uproar. The pedestrians on the official road immediately rushed towards the city gates. But there was an exception. The black-clothed man stopped, and the man behind him whispered, "Imperial tutor, it seems like the Emperor of Tang Dynasty has already sent out wanted posters everywhere. We can't enter Anhua County. Not only can we not enter this county, we can't enter the other counties either." That's right, this black-clothed man was Wu Jie, who had escaped from Chang'an. The 4 people behind him were Turkic warriors who had followed him from the Turks to Tang Dynasty. That night, Wu Jie had not brought them into Cloud Mountain because he was confident in his own strength, and because bringing too many people would make it easier for them to be discovered. Moreover, retreating would be very troublesome. Wu Jie stood with his hands clasped behind his back, squinting his eyes as he looked outside the walls of Anhua County. A group of citizens had gathered there, and a wanted poster had just been posted on the walls. After a moment of silence, Wu Jie clenched his fists and said, "From now on, take the small roads and not the official roads. If we can't enter the county, we'll take a detour. Find the farmers in the villages to replenish our rations." "Yes, Imperial tutor." The man behind Wu Jie quickly straightened his back and cupped his fists. "His Majesty has given this Marquis the authority to control the soldiers of the northern 32 provinces. This Marquis wishes to transfer 30,000 elites from the Bing province barracks. General Su, do you have any objections?" As noon approached, Li Zishuan, led by Wang Aon, finally arrived at the Bing province barracks outside the city. This barracks was very large, and the tents alone stretched for several dozen. Li Zishuan conservatively estimated that this barracks could hold at least 100,000 soldiers. After patrolling the barracks, Li Zishuan asked a general beside him. This general was called Su Tingde, the commandant of the Bing province barracks. When Li Ji was not present, he was the boss of the barracks. Hearing this, Su Tingde hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Marquis, with His Majesty's decree in hand, how could this general dare to disobey? Marquis wants 30,000 soldiers. This general will go and transfer them for you." Li Zishuan let out a sigh of relief and said, "Then I'll have to trouble General Su." Su Tingde cupped his fists and said, "Marquis is too polite." Dong dong dong. A moment later, the drums in the Bing province barracks were beaten. This was the sound of the drums to gather the soldiers. Not long later, countless of government soldiers headed towards the direction of the academy examination stage. Su Ting wanted to gather the soldiers in front of Li Zixuan. After everyone stood still, Li Zixuan looked around and saw that the vast field was densely packed with people. There were at least 70 to 80,000 people. Marquis, these are the 80,000 soldiers of the Bing province barracks. Among them, the A barracks is the most elite, and the B barracks are slightly behind. Su Ting turned his head and said to Li Zixuan. Chapter 1537. If Wu Jie wants to escape the Great Tang in the shortest time possible, the route he would take would be from Chang'an through Feng Province, Ning Province, Qing Province, Jiang Province, Shuo Province, and then from Huayuan to the steppe. Based on the speed of the martial grandmaster, Wu Jie has probably already passed through Feng Province, perhaps even reached Qing Province. What we need to do now is to set up an ambush at the passes that must be passed between Qing Province and the steppe. Wu Jie would never have imagined that the northern provinces of the Great Tang would react so quickly. Li Zixuan led the army out of the city at top speed and headed straight for Jiang Province in the west after organizing the 30,000 soldiers who were skilled in battle formations. On the road, Li Zixuan analyzed the situation to Su Tingda. Because he didn't have any generals he was familiar with, and he didn't have the time to familiarize himself with the people around him, Li Zixuan could only do everything himself and slowly build up a tacit understanding with the soldiers from Bing Province. Only after he understood the abilities of the people around him could he gradually delegate authority to others. Fortunately, Su Tingda, the commandant of Bing Province's subjugation prefecture, was rather capable and experienced on the battlefield. Most importantly, he was obedient and didn't have the rebellious nature of the veteran generals. He carefully listened to Li Zixuan's every word and cupped his fist. Marquis's words are reasonable. This is the shortest route from Chang into the steppe. But this general estimates that in order to avoid the pursuit of the imperial court, Wu Jie might not take the official road, but the smaller ones. As long as we guard the important passes that he must pass through, we'll definitely be able to intercept him. Li Zixuan nodded, and after a few moments, he asked, Commandant Su has been stationed in Bing Province for many years, so you must be more familiar with the passes in the north than this Marquis. In Commandant Su's opinion, should this Marquis dispatch soldiers to those passes? In truth, he had a map of the Great Tang in his mind, and he was clearly aware of the passes in the north. He had only asked this question because he wanted to test Su Tingda. Of course, for Su Tingda himself, he was very happy to accept this consideration. Earlier, Li Zixuan had already stated the purpose of this deployment, to surround and capture Wu Jie. For Su Tingda, this was an excellent opportunity to render meritorious service. If he performed well in this battle and received a little bit of support from Li Zixuan, then he might be promoted by another rank. Don't be fooled by Su Tingda's uncouth appearance. This fellow was very meticulous. In the past year, Li Zixuan had been promoted like a rocket, becoming the most dazzling upstart in the imperial court in recent years. Perhaps no one in the younger generation could compare to him in the glory of the emperor's favor. Moreover, putting aside his official position, Li Zixuan was also a martial arts grandmaster. Even though he had never been on the battlefield before, Su Tingda did not dare to underestimate him, so he had been carefully and conscientiously waiting on the side. Replying to Marquis, this general believes that we should first set up an ambush at Longmen Pass, as it is the closest to the Qing province. Secondly, we should dispatch a small number of troops to Longmen Pass, Yonghe Pass, and even Yinmen Pass. Firstly, we should prevent Wu Jie from passing through Longmen Pass. Secondly, if we fail to stop Wu Jie at Longmen Pass, the remaining 3 passes should be able to delay him for a while. Most importantly, these 4 passes have always been contested by military strategists since ancient times. They're the only passes on the way to the steppe, and they're also the only passes on the way to the Central Plains. If Wu Jie wants to go around them, he would have to travel at least 500 or 600 li, so he can't go around them. After thinking for a while, Su Tingda cupped his fist to Li Zishuan. In ancient times, there were many places that military strategists fought over. Some modern people might not understand why there were places that military strategists fought over, and why would they spend a huge amount of troops to capture these places? Couldn't they just go around them? In fact, these strategic locations were generally divided into two types. One was a pass, and the other was an important town. A pass was a strategic pass. Under normal circumstances, the terrain on both sides of the pass was mountainous, making it impossible to go around it. However, an important town could be bypassed, but if one didn't attack such an important town and instead went around it, it would make the entire military operation meaningless, and it would be easy to be caught in a pincer attack. The Longmen Pass, Longmen Pass, Longmen Pass, Yonghe Pass, and Yinmen Pass that Su Tingda mentioned all belong to this type of strategic pass. Hearing this, Li Zishuan's face couldn't help showing a trace of praise, nodding with a smile. Good. In Wu Jie's opinion, the northern provinces of the Great Tang still hadn't received the news that he was wanted by the imperial court, so they hadn't effectively organized their forces to intercept him. Under these circumstances, it was even less likely that he would deliberately go around the pass. Since that's the case, this marquis will now take 10,000 soldiers to Longmen Pass. Commandant Su, you will take the remaining 20,000 soldiers and head north. Take this marquis order and the imperial edict to set up defenses at Longmen Pass, and Yinmen Pass. If necessary, you can have the soldiers of the nearby provinces assist you. This marquis will set up an inescapable net that will make it impossible for Wu Jie to escape. Through these considerations, Li Zishuan discovered that Su Tingda had some talent as a general. Although he hadn't heard of this person in the history books, in the 5,000 years of history of China, it was impossible for every capable person to leave their name in the annals of history, right? Those who were buried in the long river of history might not all be incapable people. It was precisely because of this consideration that Li Zishuan decided to have Su Tingda lead an army to set up defenses in the north. But then again, the only capable general by his side who could take charge of a region on his own was Su Tingda. If he didn't choose this person, who else could he choose? Su Tingda's heart suddenly shook, and a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. He quickly cupped his fists and said, "Many thanks for Marquis trust. However, this general suggests that Marquis lead 20,000 soldiers to guard Longmen Pass, while this subordinate leads 10,000 elite soldiers to set up defenses in the north. After all, Wu Jie is most likely still in the Qing province region. Longmen Pass will soon usher in a fierce battle. In comparison, the three passes in the north are less likely to be in danger." He was worried that if he left too few soldiers behind, Li Zishuan might be in danger. Li Zishuan thought for a moment, but in the end, he shook his head and said, "You don't need to worry about this marquis. Even if Wu Jie has yet to reach Longmen Pass, the 10,000 soldiers this marquis has brought are enough to guard Longmen Pass. I have you lead the remaining 20,000 soldiers to the northern passes, not only to prevent Wu Jie from escaping, but also to prevent the Turkic army from the north." Su Tingda couldn't help but be shocked by these words, and he asked in shock, "Marquis, you mean that the Turks will send an army to invade the borders of our Great Tang?" This was big news. Although the Great Tang and the Turks occasionally had friction, those were only small skirmishes. Once the Turks officially invaded the heartland of the Great Tang, it would mean that the two countries were about to go to war. The Wei River Alliance in the 9th year of Wuda was because the Great Tang had just experienced internal strife and didn't have the strength to take on such a tough battle, so it chose to compromise. But now, the Great Tang was unprecedentedly strong, and anyone who understood the situation could see that within 3 years, the Great Tang would definitely take revenge for the siege of their city. Now that he heard Li Zishuan say that the Turks might attack the passes in the north, Su Tingda instantly felt that national war was about to descend. Li Zishuan thoughtfully nodded and said, "Very likely. Do you know what Wu Jie stole from the Great Tang?" He stole the most important batch of confidential information from Yanwang College. As long as the Turks learn what is in there, in less than a year, the Turks will be at least twice as strong as they are now. At that time, the great Tang will have no power to fight back against the Turks. With such an important item, do you think that Xieli will not send soldiers to receive Wu Jie? His expression turned solemn as he cupped his fists and said, Marquis, don't worry. This general will definitely guard the passes in the north and will definitely not let the Turks enter the great Tang's territory. Li Zixuan nodded and said, that's for the best. Quickly take 20,000 elite soldiers to the north. Su Tingda cupped his fists and replied loudly, yes. This general will go right away. Then he turned around and shouted to the soldiers behind him, 3rd Battalion, 4th Battalion, 5th Battalion, and 6th Battalion, listen up. Immediately follow this general to Maduguin. Yes. The 20,000 soldiers replied loudly, and then changed their path and followed Su Tingda to the north. On the other hand, Li Zixuan led the remaining 10,000 soldiers and continued to advance towards the Longmen Pass. When the army reached a hillside in Longmen County, 2 GAJ sounds suddenly came from the sky. The sound was a little like the cry of a goose. Li Zixuan looked up and saw a wild goose flying over his head toward the southwest. But at this moment a xiao sound was heard, and a sharp arrow shot out from the forest on the hillside, heading straight for the wild goose. No, to be precise, it was heading straight for the wild goose's mouth. The arrow pierced into the wild goose's body, and it let out a sad cry. It immediately fell from the sky and coincidentally landed 3 feet in front of Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan quickly reined in Big White. Seeing this, the soldiers behind him also stopped in their tracks. The soldiers beside Li Zixuan thought that they had encountered an ambush and quickly shouted, assassins! Quickly protect Marquis! Swish, swish, swish. The soldiers all drew the modeo from their waists and scattered around Li Zixuan. They stared at the hillsides on both sides with vigilance. Li Zixuan waved his hand helplessly and said, everyone back down. In his opinion, this was probably someone shooting wild geese on the hillside. What did it have to do with assassins? These people were a little too nervous. Everyone looked at each other and could only put away their modeo. At this moment, Li Zixuan jumped down from Debai's back and walked in front of the wild goose. Upon closer inspection, he was shocked to find that the arrow from just now had coincidentally shot into the wild goose's mouth. The hunter who had yet to show himself actually took advantage of the moment the wild goose opened its mouth and accurately shot the arrow into the wild goose's mouth. This kind of control over timing and arm strength was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. An expert. Li Zixuan didn't expect that he would encounter an expert of this level in this remote and desolate place. He could not help but become serious and shouted to the hillside on the right. Which warrior shot the wild goose? Quickly take it back. However, the forest was silent and no one responded. The hunters on the hillside were probably too scared to come out after seeing such a scene at the foot of the hill. After a while, just as Li Zixuan was about to leave, the hunter on the hillside finally spoke. Can I really take it back? You won't catch me, right? The voice was a little immature, but it sounded quite imposing. Li Zixuan could not help but be a little surprised. This was because from the voice, the person on the hillside did not seem very old. Thinking of this, he could not help but become more interested in the hunter on the hillside. Thus, he shouted, Warrior, you must be joking. Why would I catch a commoner for no reason? You just need to come down and take the wild goose. This wild goose has no external injuries. It should be able to sell for a good price. Chapter 1538. Shui Rengue, full name Li and courtesy name Rengue, was born in the southern ancestral house of the Hedong Shui clan. He was the 6th-generation grandson of Northern Wei's Hedong King Shui Andu, and could be considered to be from a prestigious family. However, when Shui Rengue was 8 years old, his father, Shui Gue, passed away due to an illness. Since then, the Shui clan declined. Of course, Shui Rengui had never given up on his martial arts while farming. The Shui family used to be a rich and powerful family. Although they had declined, they still had a rich collection of books. In addition, Shui Rengui was quite talented. Relying on the family's martial arts manuals, he was able to learn some sword and archery skills without a teacher. Therefore, although he was only 15 or 16 years old, his martial arts had already reached the Qi forming realm. Moreover, the archery skills he had displayed while shooting the geese was far superior to many of the older generation's experts. You're Shui Rengui? On the mountain road of Longmen County in Jiang Province, Li Zishuan asked casually. He didn't expect to receive such a shocking answer. He widened his eyes and asked in disbelief, Marquis, how do you know my handwriting? This time, it was Shui Rengui's turn to be stunned. He opened his mouth and looked at Li Zishuan as if he had seen a ghost. About that. Li Zishuan knew that he had misspoken. He looked a little embarrassed. After thinking about it, he began to justify himself. Rengui, do you know who I am? Shui Rengui shook his head subconsciously and said, I don't know. Ahem. Li Zishuan coughed softly and said, I am Li Zishuan, the Marquis of Yong, and personally conferred by the Emperor. I am also the Yamacho of Yanwang College. Shui Rengui heard this and was both surprised and excited. He cupped his fists and said, You are the Marquis of Yong'an? I admire Marquis the most. I didn't expect to see the real face of Marquis today. It is a blessing of 3 lifetimes. With that, he bowed to Li Zishuan with a sincere expression. At this time, he had already forgotten to ask Li Zishuan how he knew his name was Shui Rengui. Li Zishuan raised his hands and laughed. Ha ha, I didn't think that my name would spread all the way to Hedong Road. Rengui, you don't need to be polite. Please rise. Shui Rengui straightened up and said seriously, Marquis built the curved plow, the water wheel, the academy, and the industrial school. Now, he is leading the children of the fief to destroy the plague of locusts. He has long been famous. How can I not know the name of Marquis? After being praised by Shui Rengui, the future general of Tang, Li Zishuan felt a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly and said, Ahem, this Marquis has only done what he should have done in his position and in his political affairs. That's all. Oh, right. Didn't you ask me why I know your handwriting? Coincidentally, there's a teacher in Yanhuang College who happens to be from Longmen County. He seems to be acquainted with your grandfather. He mentioned you in front of me before. Shui Rengui couldn't help but ask, Marquis, who is this teacher from Yanhuang College? Li Zishuan smiled and said, Wang Ji, Wang Wugong. Rengui, you must have heard of him. Coincidentally, Wang Ji's hometown was also Longmen County in Jiang Province. He was from the same hometown as Shui Rengui. Furthermore, Wang Ji was also from a prestigious family. In a small county, it was impossible for 2 prestigious families to not know each other, right? Therefore, Li Zishuan had an idea and used Wang Ji as a shield. Shui Rengui's expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help but sigh. So it's Mr. Wang from Dongoozi. I didn't expect him to still remember the Shui family. Li Zishuan saw that it was getting late. The battle ahead was more important. Even if he thought highly of Shui Rengui, he couldn't stay here for too long. After all, the most important thing right now was to catch Wu Jie. Therefore, he cupped his hands and smiled, haha. Rengui's archery today has opened this Marquis' eyes. It's getting late, and this Marquis still has important matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Rengui, if you want to join the army or go to Chong and to seek a way out, just come to Yinshan to find this Marquis. Today was only his first meeting with Shui Rengui. He couldn't directly invite Shui Rengui to join the army, right? That wouldn't be in line with the rules. Moreover, Shui Rengui most likely wouldn't agree. In history, Shui Rengui had joined the army at the age of 30 under the persuasion of his wife, Lady Lu. At that time, Lier was on a campaign against Liaodong, setting a big stage for Shui Rengui. However, Shui Rengui didn't disappoint. On many occasions, he single-handedly took the heads of enemy generals and made a name for himself. The current Shui Rengui was only in his teens. On one hand, he was still lacking in martial arts and strategy. On the other hand, he probably hadn't thought about joining the army yet. As an outsider, Li Zishuan naturally couldn't persuade him. This kind of thing depended on luck. Xuerengui's eyes flashed. He looked at the more than 10,000 soldiers behind Li Zishuan, then cupped his fists and asked, Renge, maybe so bold as to ask, what is Marquis's purpose in coming here? Li Zishuan's face turned solemn as he said in a deep voice, the Turkic state preceptor took advantage of this Marquis's disaster relief in the north to sneak into Yunshan and attack the academy. Not only did he injure the teachers, students, and guards of the academy, he also stole some of the academy's secret books. He wants to bring them back to the Turks. If he successfully escapes back to the Turks, it will definitely be a disaster for our great Tang. Therefore, this Marquis has transferred 10,000 soldiers from Bing province to intercept him at Longmen Pass. Xuerengui was shocked and angry. This Turkic state preceptor is actually so bold. Li Zishuan nodded and said, this Marquis will remember this debt. If there is a chance in the future, I will definitely return it double. Right now, the most important thing is to make sure that Wu Jie stays in the Great Tang. Ringui, go back. We will part here. If you go to the capital in the future, if you need any help, don't hesitate to look for this Marquis. Then, he waved his hand to the army behind him and shouted, set off. Continue marching. Yes. The soldiers roared in response. Xuerengui hurriedly stepped aside and then cupped his fist to Li Zishuan. Marquis, take care. For him, to be able to meet Li Zishuan, the popular person of the imperial court, and the person he admired the most, was very unexpected. But just like Li Zishuan's previous concerns, Xuerengui also had his own concerns. He couldn't just listen to Li Zishuan and join the army just because they met once and then asked for Li Zishuan's help. In other people's eyes, Xuerengui was trying to curry favor with the rich and powerful. This was something Xuerengui couldn't tolerate. Therefore, he didn't agree to Li Zishuan's request to join the army. But today, Li Zishuan's suggestion opened a door in his heart. Now that his family was in decline, why couldn't he join the army, kill enemies on the battlefield, and completely restore the Xue family? Standing by the side of the road, Xuerengui watched as Li Zishuan's group gradually disappeared into the distance. Only after the army had disappeared from his field of vision did Xuerengui turn around and head southeast with the wild goose that he had shot down. His gaze seemed to have become even more resolute. Now that the defense of Longmen Pass has been replaced by our people, in a while, pass down the order. If you see someone wearing a black robe and carrying a mace, immediately warn them. The rest of you hide in the dark and don't act rashly. When you hear the warning, immediately come out from all directions and surround Wu Jie. In a large tent next to Longmen Pass, Li Zishuan looked at the dozen or so officers from the A and B camps in front of him and gave his orders in a deep voice. From Bing province to Longmen Pass in Jiang province, they only took 4 hours to rush the entire way. After arriving here, Li Zishuan directly ordered people to replace all the guards here. However, because he gave the imperial edict to Su Ting, it was inevitable that there would be some friction. However, the official soldiers of Bing province were quite strong and only used 20 or so people to take down the original guards. Li Zishuan specifically let one person go and let him go to the provincial governor of Jiang province. As for himself, he took advantage of this time to arrange the next step of the defense for the generals in the army. This general obeys. The soldiers in the tent all cupped their hands and bowed. Li Zishuan nodded and continued to give orders. The defense of Longmen Pass must be relaxed on the outside and tight on the inside. We can't let Wu Jin notice anything amiss and directly escape from somewhere else. The 10,000 soldiers that we brought today are not allowed to set up tents or cook. They can only lie in ambush at the prearranged location. If anyone dares to alert the enemy, don't blame this Marquis for being impolite. At this point, Li Zishuan's face began to turn cold. One of the officers couldn't help but ask, Marquis, if we can't cook, what will the soldiers eat? Li Zishuan said indifferently. Dry rations. Provincial Governor Wang will soon send over a batch of dry rations for the soldiers to distribute to each camp. Everyone will suffer for the next 2 days, but when we capture Wu Jie, all the suffering you've suffered today will be worth it. The officer paused for a moment, then cupped his fists and replied, Marquis is wise. Marquis, the provincial governor of Jiang Province, Lord Hong, requests an audience. Right at this moment, a soldier walked in quickly and bowed as he spoke. Li Zishuan nodded and said, Let him in. Then he looked at the officers in front of him and said, Everyone, go back and quickly set up the defense according to this Marquis's instructions. Yes. The officers cupped their fists and bowed before leaving. Teacher Wenji, how do you feel now? Do you feel any discomfort? Yinshan Courtyard. During lunchtime, Li Tai brought the others from Dormitory 001 to Sun Simiao's courtyard to visit the seriously ill Li Gang. Sun Simiao went to the Tang Alliance Medical Center early in the morning because Li Gang's condition was under control. Hu Jing was enough to take care of the courtyard, so he didn't need to waste time here. Seeing the haggard Li Gang lying on the bed in the room, Li Tai couldn't help but feel sad and hurriedly asked, Qin Ke, Bao Lin, Huayu, Ziffin, you're here. Sit down. Li Gang's eyes were originally closed, but when he saw Li Tai and the others come in, he opened his eyes and said with relief, Chapter 1539. Miss Jing, how is Teacher Wenji? Cloud Mountain, Sun Simiao's courtyard. Hu Jing was brought into the room by Yuchi Baolin. After taking Li Gang's pulse for a while, she put down Li Gang's wrist with a heavy expression. At this time, Li Tai hurriedly asked. The others also looked nervously at Hu Meng. Hu Meng was silent for a moment before he finally said softly, Teacher Wenji said too much to you guys just now. His body can't take it anymore, and he has already fainted. When Master comes back at noon, he will give Teacher Wenji acupuncture. His condition should be better. Teacher Wenji is already very old, and last night he was injured. Those injuries may only be minor injuries to ordinary people and will be healed in 2 days. But for Teacher Wenji, they can take his life. This morning, I heard someone say that although Teacher Wenji was injured last night, he was still fearless in front of Wu Jie, and even righteously denounced Wu Jie as a barbarian martial artist. Teacher Wenji must have been holding on for the sake of the academy. However, he has consumed a great deal of his life potential. Elder's pulse and aura of life are getting weaker and weaker. What Master and I can do is to keep him alive and try our best to keep him alive for a few more days. What? Hearing this, Li Tai, Qin Huayu, and the others all opened their eyes in shock. Sun Ziffin anxiously said, Miss Jing, is there really no other way? As long as we can cure Teacher Wenji, we will find any rare herbs for you. Li Tai's eyes lit up, and he quickly nodded. Yes, Ziffin is right. Miss Jing, if you need any herbs, just tell me. If I remember correctly, there should be a ginseng that is nearly 1,000 years old in the palace. Do you think it will be useful for Teacher Wenji? 1,000-year-old ginseng. Hu actually opened her small mouth in surprise. Then she frowned and pondered for a moment, then said, Ginseng is a great supplement to the vitality. It can heal the meridians and stabilize the broken bones. In order to save people in danger, the effect of the 1,000-year-old ginseng is even stronger. Just a root can also save Teacher Wenji's life. This 1,000-year-old ginseng does have some use, but Teacher Wenji is already at the end of his life. Even if we have the elixir, I'm afraid there's nothing we can do to save him. Hearing this, Li Tai and the other 3 couldn't help but reveal a deep sadness on their faces. At this time, they couldn't help but think of the kind smile that Li Gang had revealed in the academy in the past. And last night, when the academy was facing a great enemy, Li Gang, as a scholar, had stepped forward without hesitation to stand in front of all the students and let out a deafening cry. They would never forget this scene for the rest of their lives. Miss, please take care of Teacher Wenji. Even if it can only increase Teacher Wenji's life by a few days, I will go back to the palace and ask Father for the elixir. Li Tai's eyes were a little wet. He quickly turned his back and wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Then he turned around and solemnly saluted Hu. Hu hurriedly returned the salute and said, "Don't worry, Your Highness. I will take good care of teacher Wenji." "Okay." Li Tai nodded, then waved to the other three and said, "Huayu, Baolin, Zifen, let's go. Don't disturb teacher Wenji's rest." "Okay." The three of them nodded and said their goodbyes. Then they followed Li Tai out of the room. "Your Majesty, His Highness Prince Wei requests an audience." At noon, Lier took a nap in the suite du hall. As soon as he woke up, a chamberlain came in and bowed. Lier frowned and said in a deep voice, "Let him in." "Yes." The chamberlain cupped his hands and left. After a while, Li Tai walked in quickly. Just as he was about to salute, Lier waved his hand and said, "No need to be so polite. Did Li Zishuan send you any news?" Subconsciously, Lier thought that Li Tai had come to the palace because he had received a telegram about the front line. Li Tai was startled at first. Then he shook his head and said, "Father, Yamacho has not sent back any new news. I am here today to ask Father for a medicinal herb." "Medicinal herb? What kind of herb?" Lier was a little disappointed at first, but when he heard that Li Tai was here to ask for a medicinal herb, he couldn't help but be curious. Li Tai bowed deeply and said, "I heard that there's a ginseng that is almost 1,000 years old in the palace's warehouse. I beg Father to give me one of the roots of this ginseng." Lier couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and asked in a deep voice, "What do you want 1,000 years old ginseng for?" There was indeed 1,000 years old ginseng in the palace, but Lier had prepared it for himself. After all, ginseng of this age was really hard to come by. No matter how rich or powerful you were, you might not be able to get it. This thing could save one's life at a critical moment. For Lier, it couldn't be measured by money. It was definitely a priceless treasure. Li Tai said with a sad face, "Father, Teacher Wenji is seriously ill and urgently needs 1,000 years old ginseng to save his life. I beg Father to give him the medicine." "What? Li Gang is seriously ill?" Lier stood up in shock and asked, "I heard that Teacher Wenji only suffered some minor injuries last night. Why is he in such a critical condition now?" Li Tai cupped his hands and said, "Teacher Wenji is already old. Even if it is a minor injury, his body can't bear it. At this moment, he is already at the end of his life. Dr. Sun can only rely on acupuncture to save Teacher Wenji's life." Lier was shocked. He stood with his hands behind his back and paced on the spot. After a while, he stood still and ordered loudly, "Zhao Song." "Yes, Father." Zhao Song, who had been standing quietly at the side like an invisible person, stood up and bowed to Lier. Lier said in a deep voice, "Cut half of the 1,000 years old ginseng that I have collected and send it to Yunshan immediately." "Yes, Father." Zhao Song was slightly shocked. However, this was a decision made by Lier after careful consideration. He couldn't say much and could only agree with it. After that, Zhao Song slowly left the hall. Li Tai said excitedly, "Thank you, Father." Lier closed his eyes and waved his hand. He sighed and said, "Wenji is not only a teacher of Yanhuang College, but also a rare treasure of Tang Empire. I don't want him to leave this world." The hall fell into silence. After a while, Lier asked again, "Does Li Zishuan know about this?" Li Tai cupped his hands and said, "The Yamacho is currently setting up a defense line in the north to stop Wu Jie. I was afraid that if I told them about this, it would distract the Yamacho, so I didn't tell the Yamacho." "Yes, you did the right thing." Hearing this, Lier couldn't help but nod in praise. The most important thing right now is to keep Wu Jie here and snatch back the Academy's information. You go back and guard the telegraph. If Li Zishuan sends back any news, report it to this emperor immediately. Once I'm done with my work, I will personally go to Yinshan tomorrow to visit Teacher Wenji." Li Tai bowed and said, "Yes, Father. I will take my leave now." "Wait." Li Tai was about to leave when Lier shouted again. Li Tai quickly stopped and heard Lier say, "Qin Ke, bring some guards with you when you go out in the future. Chang'an City has not been peaceful recently." These words had a deeper meaning. Hearing this, Li Tai couldn't help but be puzzled. Father, Chang'an's city is under the emperor's rule. How can it not be peaceful? Li Er looked at him and said, where there is sunlight, there will be darkness. You can't go wrong by being careful. Li Tai didn't understand, but he still replied, yes, Father. Imperial teacher, the Tang Empire's Dragon Gate is not far ahead. After the Dragon Gate, we are only 600 li away from the grasslands. I wonder if the Tang Empire's Imperial Court's arrest warrant has been sent to Jiang Province. On the main road to the west of Jiang Province, a black-robed man and 4 other warriors were hurriedly riding their horses towards the north. It was Wu Jie's group. At this time, a warrior next to Wu Jie pointed at the impregnable pass in front of them and said, Wu Jie frowned and said, we will change horses along the way. Our speed will definitely be faster than the Tang Empire's messengers. The Dragon Gate is far from the Tang Empire's capital. Even if the Jiang Province's Imperial Court receive the arrest warrant, they won't have enough time to dispatch troops. Of course, for safety's sake, we don't need to pay attention to the Tang Empire's army. We will just ride our horses and rush over. After rushing out of the Dragon Gate, we will continue to take the small path to avoid being discovered. Imperial teacher is wise. As soon as Wu Jie's voice fell, a group of licking dogs began to crazily lick his boots. The sun set in the west, and the shadows of the few people were elongated on the ground. After a while, the sun had completely set and the sky gradually became dark. Shoo! Wait! Stop! Seeing the Dragon Gate getting closer and closer, Wu Jie suddenly reined in his horse and shouted to the people next to him. The other 4 people heard his voice and quickly began to rein in their horses. Finally, they stopped 5 steps in front of Wu Jie. Then, they hurriedly controlled their horses and returned to Wu Jie's side. Imperial teacher, why aren't we going? A warrior asked in bewilderment. Wu Jie looked at the Dragon Gate not far away and said with a dignified face, it's too quiet here. I'm afraid there's a trap. Be careful. You, go ahead and explore the path. At the end of his words, Wu Jie pointed to a warrior next to him and said, although he didn't believe that the Tang Empire's army would set up a defense so quickly, his intuition told him that there might be an ambush here. Yes, Imperial teacher. The man responded and continued to urge his warhorse to gallop towards the Dragon Gate. Who are you? Quickly dismount. It's so late. Why did you come out? When the horses were still a few dozen feet away from the Dragon Gate, a general shouted. Shoo! The warrior reined in his horse and stopped not far in front of the general. He then dismounted and cupped his hands. General, this humble one lives in Yangji village in the north of Jiang Province. I have been helping people transport goods in the south. A few days ago, I received a letter from my family saying that my mother is seriously ill. This humble one hurriedly rushed home to see my mother for the last time. I hope the general can make it convenient for me. Listening to this person's accent, it was actually very standard Chinese, and there was a little bit of an accent from Chang'an. The general pondered for a moment and said, since it's urgent, for the sake of your filial piety, let's go. After saying that, he waved his hand, and the gate of the Dragon Gate was immediately opened. The warrior quickly rode his horse and rushed to the gate. Chapter 1540. Wu Jie felt that there was an ambush in the peaceful Dragon Gate Pass, while Li Zhaxuan felt that there were Turks hiding in the forest around Dragon Gate Pass. Neither of them had any evidence, nor were they absolutely certain. They were just relying on their intuition. Intuition. The intuition of an expert was a very vague feeling, but many experts believed in this vague intuition. This was because they had escaped from death countless times and relied on this intuition. What's more, at Li Zhaxuan and Wu Jie's current level of cultivation, they often had a kind of vague premonition of danger. Although it couldn't be called foresight, it could only be said that their sense of danger was far sharper than ordinary people's. On the other side, Lantian County, Strange Interest Pavilion's new workshop. Have you found little you? In the Datang Daily's editorial department, Ma Zhou asked a middle-aged scholar with an ugly expression. He didn't feel anything when he didn't see Li Yu at noon, but after not seeing her for an entire afternoon, he had a bad premonition. Thus, he quickly mobilized the entire editorial department to search for Li Yu. "Steward Ma, we've searched the entire workshop, but we haven't found Miss Li Yu. We've also searched Plum Village and Han Village, but we haven't found her." The middle-aged scholar was an editor in the editorial department, and he had a bitter expression as he spoke. Li Yu had a lively personality and was very popular in the editorial department. Her sudden disappearance had raised the morale of the entire editorial department. Everyone had been searching for her the entire afternoon, but after searching the entire workshop, Han Village, and Plum Village, they still couldn't find any trace of Li Yu. The middle-aged scholar was also feeling very uncomfortable. How was this possible? Since little Yu came to Chang, and last year, she hasn't been to many places. Where could she have gone now? Search. Continue searching. Ma Zhou's face was gloomy as he punched the bookshelf beside him and said in a deep voice. Not to mention that Li Yu was brought into the Datong Daily editorial department by Li Zixuan. Just by interacting with Li Yu for a year, Ma Zhou had already regarded Li Yu as his own little sister. Now that Li Yu had suddenly disappeared, he was the most anxious. Old Ma, Uncle Nyo from Plum Village said he saw Li Yu at noon. At this moment, Song Xiaoxi's panting voice came from outside the door. Then, Song Xiaoxi ran in, panting heavily. Ma Zhou was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly stepped forward and asked excitedly, "Little Four, what did you say? Did someone from the Han Village see Li Yu? Where did you see it?" Huff huff. Song Xiaoxi took 2 deep breaths and replied, "Master Ma, Uncle Nyo said that when he came back from Chong and at noon, he saw Miss Li Yu riding a horse and galloping on the cement road. She seemed to be in a hurry, so he didn't know where she was going." "What? Li Yu left?" Ma Zhou was shocked. Then, a look of worry flashed across his face. After a while, he sighed and said, "Where can this child go by herself?" The middle-aged scholar from earlier couldn't help but comfort him. "Steward Ma, Li Yu is able to come to Chong, and from Yuezhou alone. This means that she is very experienced. You don't have to worry too much. No matter where she goes, she will be fine." Ma Zhou waved his hand and said, "All right, everyone, you can leave now. Thank you for your hard work today. I will go back to the academy and see if I can find any clues." "All right, we will take our leave now." Everyone in the room cupped their fists and said, Ma Zhou nodded, and everyone dispersed. After a while, Ma Zhou also left the room with his hands behind his back and walked towards the door of the workshop. "What? Li Yu left Lantian County alone on a horse? When did this happen?" Yinshan, Yinwang College. After hearing Ma Zhou's words, Mo Huai was slightly surprised. The more Ma Zhou thought about it in the workshop, the more he felt that something was wrong. Li Yu had no relatives or friends, so there was no reason for her to go on a journey alone. Thinking back to the afternoon, he seemed to have heard Mo Huai mention that Li Yu had come to Yinshan. He went back to the academy to ask Mo Huai about it. At noon, a villager from the Han family village saw Li Yu galloping on a horse on the cement road from Yinshan to Chan. "Mr. Mo, I heard you say that Li Yu came to the academy. What did she come for?" Ma Zhou replied and then asked hurriedly. Mo Huai frowned for a moment before muttering. Li Yu claimed that Wu Jie recognized the jade bracelet on her wrist and likely knew the whereabouts of her parents, so she wanted to go north with the imperial court's army. But General Qin refused, so she left. Ma Zhou was shocked. "Mr. Mo, you mean that Li Yu pleaded with General Qin but failed, so she went north alone to find Wu Jie?" Mo Huai nodded, then shook his head. "Not entirely. Miss Li Yu is smart and courageous. She should know that she can't find Wu Jie in the sea of people by herself. This old man thinks that she went north to find Yamacho and wanted to rely on the Yamacho's power to find Wu Jie. How does she know where Yamacho is now?" Ma Zhou was puzzled. Mo Huai thought for a moment and guessed. Maybe she got the news from Qin Ke. The two fell into silence. After some time, Mo Huai suddenly said, "Mr. Ma, do you think that Li Yu's parents have something to do with the Turks?" Ma Zhou was shocked when he heard this. He widened his eyes and said, "Impossible. I heard little Yu talk about her background. Her parents are definitely Han people. Although all the signs showed that Li Yu's parents had something to do with the Turks, Ma Zhou didn't dare to think in that direction. If that was the case, he couldn't imagine how painful Li Yu would be. When Mo Huai heard this, he wanted to say something but hesitated. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "Mr. Ma, don't forget, during the end of the Sui dynasty, the Central Plains was in chaos, and millions of Han people chose to join the Turks. Based on Miss Li Yu's age, she was born at a time when the world's heroes were rising." With Mo Huai unraveling the final layer of packaging, Ma Zhou could no longer retort and fell silent. According to Li Yu's story, she had been born in a time of great chaos. These countless coincidences forced Ma Zhou to believe that Li Yu's parents were related to the Turks, but he had no choice but to do so. At this moment, Ma Zhou couldn't help but feel sorry for Li Yu. If the truth was true, then Li Yu must have suffered a lot. Imperial teacher, other than a few wisps of smoke near Longmen Pass, there isn't any other smoke. It seems like there really isn't an ambush here. Night fell. At the foot of a hill in front of Longmen Pass, a warrior whispered to Wu Jie. Although they had rested for a while Wu Jie was observing the situation, they weren't feeling well because they were hungry. Originally, they had thought that after passing through the Dragon Gate, they would be able to borrow some food from the villagers. But who would have thought that Wu Jie would suddenly go crazy and refuse to come out, causing everyone to be both tired and hungry? Since that's the case, let's prepare to pass. Although the ominous premonition in Wu Jie's heart hadn't weakened in the slightest, he also knew that hiding here wasn't a solution. If they delayed any longer, they really wouldn't be able to leave the Great Tang. So a vicious light flashed in his eyes as he sternly ordered. Even if there was an ambush, Wu Jie was confident that he could break out of the encirclement and escape Longmen Pass. This was the confidence he had in his own strength. On Cloud Mountain, 3 Grandmasters and 2,000 Imperial Guards couldn't do anything to him, so Wu Jie didn't believe that he would be defeated in a small Longmen Pass. Yes, Imperial teacher. The 3 martial artists responded excitedly, then mounted their horses one after another, adjusting the direction of their horses. At this time, Wu Jie also jumped on his horse, and the 4 of them lined up in a row, intending to use brute force to rush out of the Dragon Gate. Because at this time, no matter what reason they had, the soldiers guarding the pass wouldn't let them out, so they wisely chose to break out of the pass. Charge! Seeing that everyone was ready, Wu Jie roared and took the lead, spurring his horse forward and gripping his mace. He charged towards Dragon Gate Pass. Charge! Seeing this, the other 3 martial artists quickly followed suit, raising their weapons and following Wu Jie's lead, charged forward. Dong dong dong. The rapid sound of horse hooves suddenly exploded on the official road, and the soldiers guarding Longmen Pass soon heard the abnormal movement here. They secretly sent someone to report to Li Zishuan, then shouted in a panic, "Who is it? This is the Dragon Gate Pass. Get off your horses quickly." But the 4 people on the opposite side didn't seem to hear their warning and continued to rush toward them. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Seeing that their warning was useless, the guards at Longmen Pass began to shout at the top of their lungs. Suddenly, more than 20 soldiers with Mo's swords rushed out from the turrets on both sides and stood in a row in front of Longmen Pass. Seeing this, the 3 Turkic warriors couldn't help but think proudly. There are only 20 Tang soldiers. How could there be an ambush? Imperial teacher is too suspicious today, isn't he? Not only did they think so, but Wu Jie also thought so. Seeing that there were only 20 Tang soldiers lined up in front of Longmen Pass, he couldn't help but wonder if he was too nervous and thought there was an ambush. But at this moment, it was useless to think about it. The most important thing now was to get rid of all the Tang soldiers in front of them and rush out of Longmen Pass as soon as possible. Therefore, Wu Jie clenched the mace in his hand. He wanted to use this blood-stained mace to break a big hole in the fragile defense line of the Tang soldiers. Chapter 1541. Duga Nine Swords. When Wu Jie raised his mace and swung it towards Li Zixuan's head, Li Zixuan subconsciously chose to use the Duga Nine Swords broken spear style. It wasn't because the Taishian Nine Swords and Taiji Sword weren't strong, but because facing Wu Jie's mace, Li Zixuan felt that the best choice was still the Duga Nine Swords broken spear style, because the broken spear style was a natural counter to the mace. Compared to Duga Wixin, Li Zixuan's cultivation was higher, his true qi was richer, and his understanding of martial arts was deeper. Therefore, in the blink of an eye, the Duga Nine Swords broken spear style had been condensed. The wind, chasing sword, and the mace collided in the air. Although the broken spear style had a natural suppressive effect on the mace, the gap between the martial scholar intermediate stage and martial grandmaster stage was too great. Li Zixuan suddenly felt a huge force pass through his wind-chasing sword, and what was strange was that in addition to the huge force, Li Zixuan also felt an electric current pass through his sword, causing his hand to feel numb. Regarding Wu Jie's true qi faintly containing the power of lightning, Li Tai had mentioned it before in the telegram, but after facing it for real, Li Zixuan was still surprised by Wu Jie's ability. He quickly tried to use his true qi to neutralize the huge force and the electric current passing through his sword hilt, because if his arm was electrocuted, it was likely that it would become completely numb and he wouldn't even be able to hold his sword. Seeing that his first attack had failed, Wu Jie quickly changed his stance, changing from a vertical slash to a horizontal sweep, intending to send Li Zixuan flying with his mace. However, the Duga Nine Swords broken spear style's power lay here. Based on the opponent's instantaneous movements, the user could quickly predict the opponent's next move and make the best response, achieving the goal of defeating the enemy first. Although the Duga Nine Swords wasn't Li Zixuan's signature move, with Li Zixuan's superb talent in martial arts, Li Zixuan's Duga Nine Swords was much better than Dugu X Science. Therefore, just as Wu Jie was about to change from a slash to a sweep, Li Zixuan had already made a response. Li Zixuan's long sword moved slightly to the left. His wind-chasing sword drew a perfect arc in the air. Li's powerful broken spear style sword, Spear Style's mace's broken spear style, was instantly neutralized by his TSSSS, this Nine Swords, riding wind sword. S's S sword instantly sword first sword riding the wind riding sword. Sword wind sword. S sword. S the situation had changed too quickly. The surrounding soldiers had just seen Li Zixuan being suppressed by Wu Jie. But in the next moment, Li Zixuan had launched a counterattack. A youth who had just turned 20 years old had actually launched a counterattack against a martial grandmaster who had been famous for a long time. What was wrong with this world? Everyone couldn't help but have such a question in their hearts. In fact, it wasn't just the soldiers who had doubts in their hearts. Wu Jie was even more confused. At the moment when he fought with Li Zixuan, he felt that he was not fighting with one person, but three masters at the Grandmaster middle stage at the same time. Li Zixuan had used 3 different sword intents at almost the same time, and each sword intent had been so pure. What's more, the 3 sword intents were seamlessly linked together. Wu Jie felt like he was facing 3 people who were using 3 different sword intents. In fact, this was mainly due to Li Zixuan's 9 Taishian swords, Taiji sword, and Duga 9 swords. Using the Dugu 9 swords to counter the enemy's first move, he could predict the enemy's next move, then use the Taiji sword to resolve the enemy's attack, and finally use the 9 Taishian swords to switch from defense to offense. With these 3 sword intents, Li Zixuan was far more powerful than an ordinary martial grandmaster. To some extent, his strength was comparable to a peak martial grandmaster. Good. Facing Li Zixuan's attack, Wu Jie didn't show the slightest fear. Laughing loudly, he patted his horse's back with one hand, and with the force of the recoil, his whole body soared into the sky. Thunder Overlord Mace! Wu Jie shouted as he flew through the air, holding the mace in his hand as he spun rapidly. Lightning flashed across the mace's surface, and from a distance, it looked like a spinning wheel as it flew towards Li Zishuan. Facing such a strange attack from Wu Jie, the surrounding 10,000 soldiers were scared out of their wits, because in their eyes, how could a mortal control lightning? At this moment, Wu Jie was like a god of war descending from the heavens, insufferably arrogant and invincible. Although their hearts were all on Li Zishuan's side, none of them believed that Li Zishuan could block Wu Jie's strange attack. Come, pum. The wind-chasing sword and the wolf-tooth mace clashed. The wind-chasing sword let out an extremely loud sword cry, which cut through the entire night sky. Immediately after, the two collided with a loud bang. The violent zhenqi that scattered in all directions not only swept up the sand and stones on the ground, but also shook all the nearby soldiers back by more than 10 steps. Wu Jie's reaction was very fast, and his true qi was extremely vigorous. Li Zishuan was sent flying by Wu Jie's attack, and in order to stabilize his body, he quickly stabbed the wind-chasing sword into the ground. After sliding back 3 steps, Li Zishuan finally stabilized his body. At the same time, the lightning energy, several times stronger than before, entered his meridians through his palms, causing his breathing to become unstable and causing him to suffer a cultivation deviation on the spot. Gap. This was the gap between a martial scholar middle stage and a martial grandmaster. Not just a little bit, but a huge chasm. Old monster. In Li Zishuan's mind, these 3 words couldn't help but appear. The Wu Jie in front of him was indeed worthy of the title Old Monster, because he was stronger than all the masters Li Zishuan had encountered before, worthy of being the disciple of spiritual master Ling Su. With this talent, in another 10 years, the whole world will be under your control. Wu Jie didn't pursue the victory. Instead, he stood in place in his black robe, looking at Li Zishuan and using his hoarse voice to praise him. Don't pretend to be so righteous here. The dignified Tujue imperial teacher actually took advantage of this marquee absence to sneak into the academy and commit theft. Even if you win today, you will be despised by the world. Li Zishuan clenched his teeth, forcibly calming the chaotic true qi in his body, then stood up and looked at Wu Jie, mocking him without fear. When Li Zishuan left Lantian County and brought the Sky Pheasant Brigade north to help the disaster-stricken areas clear out the locusts, he thought that when he wasn't in Lantian County, there would be Jianghu thieves who would take advantage of the Academy's weak defense to cause trouble, so he left all his guard behind. But he never imagined that the dignified Tujue imperial teacher, a martial grandmaster-level super expert, would personally sneak into Yanwang College, effortlessly destroy all the Academy's defenses, and steal most of the Academy's confidential information. This made Li Zishuan's heart burn with a nameless fire, and now that he finally had the chance to scold Wu Jie, how could he let it go? Hearing this, Wu Jie couldn't help but fall silent, because in this matter he was indeed opportunistic, taking advantage of other people's difficulties, and in any case, couldn't be considered honorable. After a moment of silence, Wu Jie finally opened his mouth. You're right. This time, this imperial teacher sneaked into Yanhuang College because Yunshan, which originally had 3 martial grandmasters, only has 1 martial grandmaster left. But this imperial teacher isn't afraid of you 3. He just doesn't want any trouble. Taking advantage of other people's difficulties was taking advantage of other people's difficulties, and Wu Jie didn't try to hide it for the sake of face, instead openly admitting it. From this point alone, this old man could be seen as a straightforward person. Hearing this, Li Zishuan couldn't help but look at Wu Jie in surprise. He hadn't expected Wu Jie to admit it so easily, making him unable to say the words he had prepared just now. It's not that this marquis looks down on you Turks, but the Academy's confidential books, even if you brought them back to the Turks, no one would be able to understand them. Moreover, your actions are tantamount to starting a war between the Great Tang and the Turks. Is Shili ready to start a war with the Great Tang? Hand over the books you're carrying today, and this marquis can spare your life. Inadvertently, Li Zishuan saw the bag on Wu Jie's back, and his face couldn't help but turn cold as he spoke in a deep voice. Ha! Little baby, you've got some big words. If this imperial teacher wants to leave today, you can't stop him. Hearing Li Zixuan's words, Wu Jie couldn't help but laugh loudly. Li Zixuan snorted and said, "This marquis's cultivation is indeed lower than yours. But today there are tens of thousands of troops lying in ambush at Longmen Pass. Do you think you can still escape? Tens of thousands of troops? Huh, little baby, you're too confident. Once this imperial teacher finishes you off, what can these tens of thousands of troops do to me?" Wu Jie sneered, a look of arrogance on his face. Although his tone was arrogant, he wasn't wrong in the slightest. Li Zixuan was the strongest in this army, and if he was defeated, no one would be able to pin down Wu Jie, and the main force wouldn't have the time to effectively encircle and suppress Wu Jie. He could rely on his lightness skills to escape from the army at any time. Saying so, Wu Jie raised his mace and leapt into the air again. The mace flashed with cold lightning as it once again smashed towards Li Zixuan's head. Last night, when he was dealing with Dugu Exin, Dugu Feng, and Mo Huai, Wu Jie's favorite move was this. 9 Taishian swords, second form, graceful grace. Li Zixuan let out a low roar, instantly activating the second form of the 9 Taishian swords. Like a giant dragon soaring through the sky, Li Zixuan shot towards Wu Jie at full speed. At the same time, in the northern part of the Great Tang Empire, Yinmen Pass, Su Ting led the 20,000 Bing province soldiers and the imperial edict that Li Er had given to Li Zixuan. They rushed all the way to Yinmen Pass before nightfall and took the initiative to take on the task of guarding Yinmen Pass. After half a day of rushing, the soldiers and horses were already tired. After Su Ting arranged for night patrols, the rest of the soldiers returned to their tents to sleep. But what they didn't know was that a life-and-death crisis was approaching them, closer and closer. "General, the Tang army that arrived in the evening has already set up camp. Now is the time when their men and horses are tired. Should we send out the army now and directly take down the Tang army at Yinmen Pass?" In the grass outside Yinmen Pass, a dense group of Turkic soldiers were hidden, each of them accompanied by a warhorse. But at this time, all the warhorses were kneeling in the grass. This way, even if someone passed by, they wouldn't notice the army hidden in the grass. Chapter 1542. Su Tingda's 20,000 soldiers had only reached Yinmen Pass in the evening. No, to be more precise, it was 10,000 soldiers. This was because Su Tingda had left 5,000 men behind at Madu Pass and Yonga Pass. Now, he only had 10,000 men left. Moreover, after half a day of rapid marching, the soldiers were all extremely tired, and many of them were already asleep. Su Tingda felt that the Turks had chosen this time to attack, and his 10,000 men were completely incapable of stopping them. The most frightening thing was that he was holding the imperial decree that Li Erfa had given to Li Zixuan. However, he had only just arrived in the evening. Originally, he wanted to rest and reorganize for the night before transferring troops to the nearby prefectures. Who would have thought that the Tujue would launch an attack on Yinmen Pass so quickly? Go! Immediately send messengers to Yunzhou, Daizhou, and Yuzhou to ask for reinforcements. Tell them that Yinmen Pass might fall. Su Tingda's expression changed several times. At this time, he could also faintly hear the chaotic sound of horse hooves not far away. He took a deep breath and barely managed to stabilize his mind. He looked at the soldier and said word by word, "Commandant, what about you? The Turks have tens of thousands of wolf cavalry. We're definitely no match for them. Commandant, why don't you withdraw first?" The soldier hesitated for a few moments before bowing to Su Tingda. "Bastard, do you know that a commanding general fleeing before battle is a capital offense? And besides, this general is the commandant of the Great Tang's Bingzhou subjugation prefecture. Even if I die, this general will die with my brothers. A general of the Great Tang can only stand and die. I will never cower before the battle. Hurry and send men to the nearby prefectures to ask for reinforcements." Su Tingda angrily bellowed. He was afraid of death, and he had not lived long enough. He still wanted to become a higher official, obtain more glory and wealth, and enjoy a more comfortable life. But at this moment, as a great Tang soldier and the commander of this army, he could not sneak away alone. After all, Su Tingda had experienced the chaos of the Sui dynasty and the chaos of the rebellion against the emperor. He did not want his family to once more live a life of wandering about and destitute. The reason was that simple, nothing more. Commandant, I want to stay behind and fight against the Turks with Commandant. Commandant, please send someone else to ask for reinforcements. The soldier hesitated for a moment, then clasped his fists and said stubbornly. Su Tingda was touched, but his face turned cold. He said coldly, Zheng Hong, you dare to disobey a military order? The soldier trembled and hurriedly said, This general doesn't dare. Su Tingda snorted and shouted, Then why aren't you sending the order? After being yelled at by Su Tingda, the soldier was a little scared. After a moment of hesitation, he bowed and said, This general obeys. Looking at Su Tingda, the soldier reluctantly retreated from the tent. Sigh, Zheng Hong. Oh, Zheng Hong, you can't blame me. Who asked you to be the only son of your Zheng family? Looking at Zheng Hong's back as he left, Su Tingda muttered to himself, Kill. At this moment, a burst of battle cries came from the pass. Su Tingda's expression gradually turned cold. He stood up, took the long sword hanging on the wall, and walked straight out of the tent. Commandant, the Turkic army is already attacking. Our brothers won't be able to hold on much longer. You should leave quickly. Su Tingda had just walked out of the big tent when a soldier hurriedly ran over and said, How many enemies are there? Who's the leader? Su Tingda frowned and asked. The soldier cupped his fists and said, There are about 50,000 enemies, and the leader is the Turkic Khan, Ashina Shur. Commandant, Ashina Shur brought all the Turkic elites. We definitely won't be able to hold on. Please retreat as soon as possible. It's him? Hearing that, Su Tingda was stunned at first. Then he said coldly, We have a hold on even if we can't. Whoever dares to flee tonight will be killed without mercy. Yemen Pass terrain is narrow. Even if we use a pile of orders, we have to completely block the pass. Quickly beat the drum and summon all the soldiers to kill the enemy with me. I've already sent people to the nearby prefectures to ask for help. We only need to hold on for 2 hours, and there will definitely be reinforcements coming to save us. Yes, Commandant. Seeing that Su Tingda was so confident, a fighting spirit rose in the soldier's heart. He swallowed his saliva and cupped his fists. Dong, dong, dong. A moment later, a series of drum beats sounded from the south of Yemen Pass. As time passed, the drum beats became louder and more frequent. At this time, Su Tingda had already climbed up the tower of Yemen Pass. Although the Turkic people were not good at sieges, Yemen Pass was far from being a city. This was because Yemen Pass was situated on the official road in the middle. The horizontal width of the city walls was only a few hundred feet. As such, the number of soldiers that could be accommodated on the city walls was extremely limited. When the Turkic soldiers got close to the city gates, they abandoned their horses and directly carried a thick tree trunk and slammed it into the city gates of Yemen Pass. Naturally, Su Tingda would not let the Turkic people crash into the city gates of Yemen Pass just like that. He quickly shouted, Release the arrows! Release the arrows! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Hundreds of arrows were released in an instant, shooting at the Turkic soldiers charging at the city gates. After a round of arrows, dozens of Turkic soldiers fell to the ground in an instant. However, while the Tang soldiers on the city walls were reloading their arrows, the Turkic soldiers behind began to charge forward fearlessly again. Hurry and release the arrows. Seeing this, Su Tingda hurriedly urged. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Another volley of arrows was fired, but the results were somewhat worse this time. Only 30-some Turkic soldiers fell to the ground, but the Turkic soldiers behind them were still charging at the city gates like a tide. Su Tingda inwardly frowned. First of all, The Turkic soldiers outnumbered the Tang soldiers by 4 to 5 times. At this rate, they probably wouldn't be able to kill all the Turks even if they spent the entire night. Moreover, the light at night was poor, so the accuracy of the archers was definitely not as good as during the day. Many of the arrows would miss. Most importantly, in order to maintain the speed of the march, Su Tingda's army had not brought many arrows, only 10-some thousand. Based on the current accuracy, it would be good enough if they could kill 1,000 Turkic soldiers. But the Turks had 50,000 soldiers. How was he going to fight the Turks with this? Rolling logs and stones? There were some remaining rolling logs and stones on the walls of Yinmen Pass, but there were not many of them, and they would not be able to withstand the assault of 40 to 50,000 Turkic soldiers. Should they use sabers or swords? But if they did so, their advantage as defenders would be gone, and in the end, they would still be unable to avoid defeat. Uish! Just as Su Tingda was deep in thought, the sound of something tearing through the air suddenly rang out. Su Tingda focused his eyes and saw a metal arrowhead shining with a cold light in front of him. It was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to defend against a hidden arrow. Su Tingda felt that he couldn't dodge this hidden arrow. "Commandant, watch out!" At this critical moment, a soldier at Su Tingda's side leaped up and tackled Su Tingda to the ground. The arrow brushed past Su Tingda's cheek and struck the soldier's shoulder. Squelch! This was the sound of an arrow piercing flesh. The arrow was heavy and powerful, and it did not stop at the soldier's shoulder. More than half of the arrow had pierced through the soldier's body. "Protect the commandant!" Someone shouted, and 4 or 5 soldiers immediately surrounded Su Tingda. "Huh, what a pity. If we could kill the Tang commander directly, we might be able to take down Yinmen Pass effortlessly." In the Turkic army, Ashina Shir put away his longbow and lamented regretfully. Clearly, that arrow just now was shot by him. "General, there's no need to be regretful. The fact that the Tang army could reach Yinmen Pass so quickly shows that they didn't bring many arrows. These arrows can at most be shot 10 more times. When they run out of arrows, we can break through the gate and enter." A soldier beside Ashina Shir could not help but laugh. "Ha, that's right. When the Tang army runs out of arrows, we will enter the pass directly. Then we will welcome the state preceptor." Ashina Shir laughed heartily. Taiji sword techniques, 38 style. Phoenix wings spread. Taiji sword techniques, 28 style. Shooting stars chase the moon. 9 strategies beyond the swords. Broken spear style. Taiji sword techniques, 18 style. Black dragon swings its tail. Taiji sword techniques, 20th style. Lotus leaves whirlwind. 9 Taishian swords, 3rd style. Snow treading, leaving no trace in the snow. Taiji sword techniques, 34th style. Moon in the ocean. Taiji sword techniques, 50th style. Immortal guides the way. Over at Longmen Pass, the battle between Li Zishuan and Wu Jie had already reached its climax. After exchanging blows with Wu Jie, Li Zishuan was very clear about the huge gap between himself and a martial grandmaster. This gap was not something that could be made up with exquisite moves. Therefore, Li Zishuan wisely gave up on attacking and began to fight a defensive battle from the start. With the 9 solitary swords advantage, the unparalleled defense of the Taiji sword technique, and the extreme speed of the 9 Taishian swords, Li Zishuan's figure flashed through the battlefield, not letting Wu Jie even touch the corner of his clothes. After a dozen exchanges, he actually did not suffer any external injuries. Although there were no external injuries, of course there were internal injuries. In addition to Wu Jie's powerful true qi, what annoyed Li Zishuan the most was the strange power of lightning that Wu Jie sent out with his mace. If Yang Kai were to use his true qi to resist and neutralize this thing, it would be a huge waste of his true qi. In this situation, his true qi was his life, and his true qi was definitely not as vigorous as Wu Jie's, so he had to use it sparingly. However, if he completely ignored it, his arm would soon become numb from the electricity, affecting his reaction speed. And if he wasn't careful, he might even be seriously injured by Wu Jie. Therefore, although Li Zixuan had withstood Wu Jie's attacks for a dozen exchanges, this impressive achievement was not something he could be proud of, because his situation was not good. Facing Wu Jie's seemingly endless true qi, Li Zixuan's true qi was running out. Chapter 1543. Commander, you should leave. Yinmen Pass can't be defended. On Yinmen Pass, the Tang army was about to run out of arrows. Seeing this, a soldier came to Su Tingda's side and urged him anxiously. Su Tingda was unmoved and said coldly, "I would rather die than retreat." After saying that, he turned to the soldiers on the city gate tower and shouted, "Generals, listen to my order. Follow me to open the gates and fight to the death with the Turkic army. Behind us are our parents, wives, and children. Tonight, we would rather die than retreat." Su Tingda had been forced to give up the advantage of terrain and open the gates to meet the Turks. Their arrows were about to run out, and without any long-range attacks, the Turkic soldiers would be able to easily break through the gates. Rather than hastily engaging in battle, it was better to open the gates now and gather all the soldiers to engage the Turks in a battle of life and death. Rather die than retreat. Rather die than retreat. Su Tingda's words influenced the Tang army near Yinmen Pass, and they all shouted. A solemn and stirring atmosphere suddenly pervaded the air. Reporting, "General, the Tang army has taken the initiative to open the gates and want to fight us outside Yinmen Pass." At the center of the Turkic army, a Turkic soldier ran over and bowed to Ashina Shirchu. "Oh, the Tang army actually dares to come out?" Ashina Shirchu raised his eyebrows in surprise. Then, his face turned cold as he said, "Pass down my order. The left, middle, and right armies move out together and take down Yinmen Pass as quickly as possible." "Yes." The soldier cupped his fists and turned to leave. Woo-woo. Not long after, the desolate sound of a bugle horn could be heard in the open space outside Yinmen Pass. This was the bugle horn for the Turkic army to launch an all-out attack. Thus, countless Turkic soldiers mounted their horses and brandished their scimitars as they galloped toward the Tang army that had just exited the city and gotten into formation. "Listen up. Tonight, I, Su Tingda, will advance and retreat with my brothers. I swear to defend Yinmen Pass to the death." Below the city wall, Su Tingda pulled out the sword at his waist and pointed at the Turkic army. "Defend Yinmen Pass to the death. Defend Yinmen Pass to the death." As soon as Su Tingda finished speaking, the 10,000 Tang soldiers roared in unison. "Follow me and kill." Su Tingda roared as he led the charge into the Turkic army. Seeing this, the Tang army at the back quickly urged their horses to catch up. A great battle had officially begun. Su Tingda had come from a poor family, and he had relied entirely on his own abilities to reach his current position. Thus, there was no need to doubt his personal strength. Under his command, the Tang army was able to break through the heart of the Turkic army like a hot knife through butter. But the disadvantage of this was obvious. They would be easily surrounded by the Turkic army. After all, the Turkic army outnumbered them by 4 to 5 times. Oomph. Get out of the way. Wait for me to meet him. Seeing that Su Tingda was unstoppable in the army, taking down several dozen Turkic soldiers in just a few moments, Ashina Shirchu finally couldn't stand it any longer and roared. Hearing this, the Turkic soldiers around Su Tingda immediately scattered, creating an empty space. Su Tingda's eyes focused as he looked at Ashina Shirchu approaching on horseback. After a moment's hesitation, he raised his right palm to the Tang soldiers behind him and said, "All of you, withdraw as well." A general duel. In the blink of an eye, a large-scale group battle had transformed into a one-on-one duel between generals. In ancient war dramas like the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, it was common to see the commanders of two sides fighting one-on-one, and the one with superior martial strength would emerge victorious. Many people would be confused, Was there really such a phenomenon in history of generals fighting generals? In truth, this sort of situation had happened before, but it was not a scene from the romance of the Three Kingdoms, but there were many restrictions. First, generals fighting generals had already appeared in the spring and autumn period. At that time, it was called Ji Shi, and after the Han Dynasty, it was called Duan General. Both had the same meaning. In the middle of the spring and autumn period, there were records of the Great War between the Jin and Chu states. At that time, King Zhuang of Chu led an army to attack Handan and met the Jin general Zhao Cheng. Zhao Cheng was unable to resist and abandoned his carriage to escape. In the end, Zhao Cheng threw away his clothes and armor, as the armor would affect his speed. This was the first time in history that a general fought a general. This was because King Zhuang of Chu's physical strength was exceptional, and he was considered one of the strongest amongst all the emperors. During the Warring States period, such a phenomenon rarely occurred. At that time, the Seven Kingdoms had already been perfected, and they relied on large-scale armies to fight. During the Han Dynasty, when Hua Zubing and Li Guang were repelling the Xiongnu, they also fought with enemy generals. However, this was a battle between the soldiers of the Central Plains and the nomadic enemies. It was somewhat similar to the current situation between Su Tingda and Ashina Shirchu. During the War of Chu and Han, Xiangyu and Liu Bang fought, and such a phenomenon also occurred. However, when Liu Bang sent his own general to challenge the overlord, he was defeated by Xiangyu in 3 moves. The end of the Eastern Han Dynasty was also the Three Kingdoms period. It was recorded that Sun Tzu and Taisho Ci fought at Shunting Ridge, and Sun Tzu accepted Taisho Ci as a fierce general. There was also a duel between Ma Chao and Chao Wei. Other than that, there were no other records in the Three Kingdoms period. Generally speaking, there were situations where generals fought before a battle, but it was not as common as in ancient dramas. After all, the generals of ancient times were all well-versed in military books, and they understood the principle of a good man destroys schemes. Thus, the purpose of these generals in battle was to win. Unless they were at the end of their rope and wanted to fight to the death, they would not engage in a direct confrontation with the enemy generals. And now, to Su Tingda, he was indeed at the end of his rope. Although he had killed many Turkic soldiers, his subordinates had also suffered many casualties. If this continued, in less than an hour, the 10,000 Tang soldiers would be defeated by the Turkic army. You are called Su Tingda? Good. If this general wins against you today, you will have all the Tang soldiers retreat. If you win against this general will immediately withdraw. How about it? Ashina Shirchu stared at Su Tingda and spoke in a booming voice. Oomph. Even if you win against this Su, the army behind this Su will not retreat even half a step tonight. The soldiers of the Great Tang can only die standing, not kneel and drag out an ignoble existence. Su Tingda said with a cold expression. Hearing this, Ashina Shirchu's face sank. He had proposed a duel with Su Tingda partly because he wanted to reduce the number of casualties on his side, and partly because he wanted to save time. After all, Wu Jie was still waiting for them. Oomph. Since that's the case, this general will kill you first. Let's see if these Tang soldiers will do, as you say, and hold their ground. Ashina Shirchu coldly snorted. He knocked an arrow on his bow and shot 3 arrows at Su Tingda's forehead, neck, and heart. General, be careful. Many soldiers in the Tang army cried out in alarm. Su Tingda was lying on his back. The 3 arrows missed his body and brushed past the bridge of his nose. But on the other side, Ashina Shirchu took advantage of the moment when Su Tingda was dodging the arrows to rush forward and slash at Su Tingda's neck with a slender sword. This person was actually proficient in both long-range and close combat. Moreover, the speed of these 2 attacks was as fast as lightning, making it impossible to guard against. For a moment, Su Tingda was caught off guard. He hurriedly brandished his sword to block Ashina Shirchu's killing blow. However, Ashina Shirchu was a grandmaster. The speed of his sword was astonishingly fast. How could Su Tingda's hasty sword block it? Come, punk. First, there was the sound of metal clashing. Then, Su Tingda was sent flying by the powerful internal energy attached to Ashina Shirchu's sword and fell to the ground. In just one round, the chief general of the Tang army was knocked off his horse. The surrounding soldiers were shocked and rushed to Su Tingda like a swarm of bees, trying to protect him. But someone was faster than them. After Ashina Shirchu knocked Su Tingda back, he dashed forward and stabbed his sword at Su Tingda's throat. Su Tingda was alarmed as he hurriedly raised his sword to block in front of him. Ashina, she's sword stabbed into Su Tingda's sword. Su Tingda took advantage of the situation to retreat. With this force, he finally stood up from the ground. Under the illumination of the torches, the sword flashed and the two of them fought again. However, although Su Tingda was not weak, he was still not a grandmaster. Ashina Shirchu was not only at a higher level than him, but he also fought in close combat, took 3 steps back, and drew his bow in one breath. With such a combination of long-range and close-range attacks, Su Tingda could not withstand it. After a few rounds, it was obvious that he was going to lose. Charge! Protect Commandant Su. When the surrounding soldiers saw this, they understood that Su Tingda wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Someone shouted, and immediately, more than 10,000 soldiers rushed up to protect Su Tingda. Oomph. It's time to end this. When Ashina Shirchu saw that the Tang army was rushing towards him, he raised his sword and slashed at Su Tingda. Su Tingda swung his sword to block, and then Ashina Shirchu used his left palm to hit Su Tingda's chest. Bam! Su Tingda was like a kite with a broken string after receiving Ashina Shirchu's palm strike that was filled with true chi. He fell heavily to the ground. Commandant! Commandant! The 10,000 soldiers were shocked. They hurried forward to help Su Tingda up. Kill. Flatten Yemen Pass. Ashina Shirchu guessed that Su Tingda was not going to live. He waved his hand and ordered the Turkic soldiers beside him. Charge! Bam! 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 Hearing the order, the 50,000 Turkic soldiers immediately charged at the Tang army. What was worse was that the Tang army's commander-in-chief had been severely injured by Ashina Shirchu, and the 10,000 soldiers were in a desperate situation without their commander-in-chief. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.